All right. Well, good morning. Welcome to what we're calling the virtual workshop sessions. We wanted to get out with the sheriffs, talk to you guys, get some information out to you for a while. So this morning I'm going to go over just a little bit of housekeeping things. We do have all of your microphones turned off. That is so that there's no background noise, especially with you being in your offices. Sometimes people come in. That helps everybody kind of stay focused. We have the chat box available. So if you will, if you have any questions during our presentations, go ahead, type your questions inside that chat box. We do ask that there's a little box that says to. If you can make sure that says everyone, that way Lori and I can both see it. If you start selecting outside of that, she may not be able to see it during my presentation, and she'll be monitoring those chats so that she can ask your question and vice versa. So everyone, if you possibly can remember to do that, that would be great. We're going to try and answer as many of your questions as we go through. We're hoping to have time at the end of each day for you to ask additional questions. So use those as you go. We will also be writing down your questions. We just want to kind of keep a running total of those questions. We do put out a quarterly bulletin. And so my thought is we'll take these questions down and we'll include them in our next quarterly bulletin so that you can go back and reference any questions that were asked during that time. You wouldn't have to go back and re-watch this webinar itself. So, keep that in mind. And as I said, we are recording this. So we're going to put this up on our website. It normally takes about a week to 2 weeks to get it up on the website. Once it's up there, I will send out a notification, let everybody know, hey, it's available for you to go and look at. We leave them up there really indefinitely so that you can always refer back to them. So as we get started, I am Ricky Hofer. This is Lori Rogers. We are the Director of Audit Services specializing in counties. That's what we do. Sorry, I had to think about that. It's a long name. So that's what we do. So if you had a question that came up, you would probably be referred to us. If you called up to the office or you sent an email, you would most likely get us, unless we were out for some reason. We do have a joint email box that is the county's. I'll put that up on a later slide, so you'll have that if you don't have it already. Anytime you have a question, you can send it to that email box. Lori and I both have access, so we answer them as they come in. I will say that we do answer those questions typically first. We try to keep that box very clean. We do have a personal box, but like I said, counties is kind of the first one, and then we flip over. If one of us is on vacation, you may not get an answer for a while. So the counties is always your best bet if you're needing an answer a little quicker. So what do we do? Some of you, I'm sure, have been through a State Board of Accounts audit. So when we come in and do an audit of the county, we do look at the sheriff. The sheriff is a department of the county. So we come in and we look at your funds that you keep on hand. Typically that's your commissary and your inmate trust for the most part. There may be something else in there and we can kind of get to that later. But we come in, we do an audit, we issue an opinion on the financial statements of the county as a whole, in which, again, the sheriff is a department of that. If we have any comments or findings, we will put those inside of a supplemental report. There would be an exit with the sheriff, all of that. So if you have questions about that process, again, you can email us, talk to us. I know we're going to go through a little bit of it as we go through these next 2 days, but we really just kind of thought, let's give you guys a kind of an update. We haven't done that in a while. Sometimes we get a lot of questions on certain things. I know Gateway is a huge one right now. We're going to get to that tomorrow because that's a big topic. But we just thought, let's kind of just start these trainings, these workshops, give you an idea. Those who have been here a while, get to know any updated changes that have happened. Those who are newer to office, just get the guidance in here for the first time. So before we get started completely, I wanted to kind of talk to you guys about resources, because while you can email us, you can call us, there are other resources available. Let me see if I can share my screen. They moved everything. There we go. Okay. Make sure that this comes up.
She's having trouble getting in even with that code, with that link. She's saying it's asking her to register again. I gave her another password to try.
Yeah, so that's about the only thing we can do is that maybe that password. You could try capital SBOA.
That's what I gave her.
Or lowercase SBOA. Okay. So what I wanted to bring up, and hopefully you can all see this as I'm sharing my screen, is our website. So we do have a website dedicated to help you find the resources that you need. And for the sheriffs, we actually have a specific page for you guys. So if you look at our website, you have to pick the political subdivision. Sorry, I am not used to the little touchpad. You have to pick a political subdivision, and in your case, it would be counties. Okay. Once you get to the counties page, this is kind of like the home page for counties. So this is like information that kind of applies to everybody as a whole, but you can actually dig deeper in by department. And if you go to county offices, just a little bit down on the page, you will see county sheriff. If you click here, and some of you did if you went and got the presentations before, that's where they were put. They were put on the sheriff's page. And so on this page, we just have information that is for sheriffs and your bookkeepers, so that you can kind of get that information. It's more readily available. It's all together in one location for you. And like I said, if you kind of scroll down a little bit, presentations and training materials. If you didn't get the email or know that this is here, all the presentations, the agenda, the call letter with the links, everything is right here for today and tomorrow. So if you need any of that stuff, we've already got it up on the website for you to have as we're kind of going through the presentations. I told you we do a quarterly bulletin. Those are also available. I will say, just a little caveat here, we are updating our website. So currently, the bulletins as a whole are all on the county's homepage. That's where we're doing it. Since we are upgrading it, it's a little bit more difficult to upgrade these individual pages until we get it complete. So if you want to see any bulletins, if you want to see all of the bulletins that are out there, you need to be on the county's page. You can go here. These are just really specific bulletin articles that pertain to the sheriff as a whole. But if you want to see bulletins in their entirety, you need to go to the county's page. As of now, that will get fixed as we move forward in our website update, which is very exciting. Another thing I wanted to mention was we do manuals. We are currently working on putting together, and we're not sure what that's going to look like quite yet, but a manual or a chapter for the sheriffs. We have a county's manual in which we put some departments in there. We are thinking of putting it there. Again, we're still mulling it over on what it's going to look like. But trying to get all of this information that we're going to give you today, some additional information, and just kind of get it all in one place for you. Okay, a good place to kind of, if you're having an accounting question, to go and look at those. And again, as we roll that out, we will let you all know. And that leads me to my next. So, just a bit. Okay. So to get a hold of everybody was a little bit of a difficult task for us because we didn't have all the sheriff's email addresses, or any bookkeepers or, any of those. We didn't have all those email addresses. So we wanted to make sure everybody got it. So I used two different avenues. I sent it through the Sheriff's Association and I sent it to the county auditors. And in hopes that they could send it out to everybody. So that was our way of getting to you. And now that we've got you, and hopefully we keep you, we want you to subscribe. So on this page, it's actually on every page on our website. You'll see, and it's just one little simple sentence. To subscribe to our email, please sign up on this page. If you click this page, it brings you to the form to sign up for our communications. It allows you to fill in your name and then select which one you want to be a part of. In your case, it would be County Sheriff's. That way, when we do send out information, we use what we call the eGov delivery system. We'll have you inside there and we'll be able to send those emails out. You'll be involved in all those kinds of communications. We don't send out a ton. So it's not something that's going to be bombarding your email box. But things like this that come up, that makes it a much easier way for us to contact you, get a hold of you, because we would like to kind of keep these small trainings going as we go along. We do plan on doing a survey at the end of this to see what you've thought of it. Did you like it? Did you not like it? What can make it better? Topics you want to see, things like that. So it's all anonymous. I'll send you a form, you'll fill it in. Just be as honest as you can, because while we put these trainings together for you, they need to work for you, and they need to, we need to be able to work together and see to make it the best training that we possibly can. Okay. Trying to think if there's anything I missed. Don't think so. Can you think of anything I missed?
No, I don't think so.
I will say that our plan originally was to get this training out last year. Of course, like we like to call it, stupid COVID came in, and as you can tell, it kind of messed everything up, right? I mean, 2020 is kind of a wash, and it just kind of kept getting pushed down. Kind of to the back burner, and this year we just thought it was just super important to get out. We haven't done a training since, I believe, 2017. Is that right? 2017, 2018, right around there.
Yeah, right in that time.
So we know that there's been some turnover in those offices. We know that there's been changes that have occurred in, like Gateway, for example. So things that we need to get you guys all up on the information. So we hope that you find this valuable, and that you get a lot out of it today. With that, I guess we can start talking about sheriff funds. Maybe. Okay. Oh, wait, why can't I?
Just swap it.
I might have to swap it. Okay, stop. Can I swap it from here?
I don't know.
That's what I want. Okay. Oh, see. Sorry guys. They've updated WebEx since the last time we used it. Let's try to share here. No, it won't let me. Okay, that's fine. I got my notes. So we'll just do it this way.
Be that way.
Let me move that up there. Okay. All right, so we get tons of questions on funds that the sheriff has, things that we look for during an audit, all of that. So we thought we'd kind of just start off basically and just talk about the different funds that the sheriff has. So the first one I thought we'd start with is commissary funds. If you look through this presentation, or if you've had time to look, you will see that it is heavy on statute. And I did that for a reason, because when we are auditing, we audit in compliance with statute, along with some of the accounting that we prescribe. But I want, statute, we're always auditing for that compliance. So I thought it would be nice to just kind of break it apart and talk about each individual aspect of that. So for the commissary funds, here is, like I said, just broke apart. All right, so it talks about that this section applies to any county that has a jail commissary that sells merchandise to inmates. So that's what your commissary is. That's what the purpose of that fund is to sell merchandise to your inmates. It's going to be a self-funding thing, so you sell and you put money in. But as we go through it, it also in statute establishes the fund. Okay. And they refer to this as it's separate from the general fund and it's money that does not revert. Well, as you know, commissary is actually held outside of the county's ledger. So it's not part of the general fund. It's something that the sheriff keeps a record of. Okay, so that's when the bookkeeping part starts to kind of come in. So statute is defined, it's establishing that it's a fund, and it establishes that it's not part of the general fund, and it doesn't revert to the general fund. It just stays in its own little piece out here. Okay, so as we keep going through the statute, we talk about that the sheriff or their designee shall deposit the money from the commissary sales into the fund. All right, and so this needs to be kept in a depository that's designated. I went too far. Yeah, it's designated under 513.8. So it must be an approved depository. If you don't know what that is, you can talk to your treasurer. They'll be well aware of what depositories are approved. They can get you that information, and they can talk to you about the ones that are close to them and what they use if you have any questions. Okay. So statute again talks about, in this one, that it's used at the sheriff or the sheriff's designee's discretion and without appropriation by the county fiscal body. Okay, and so I put this one out separately because you think about appropriation. We also need to understand that an appropriation is just a permission to spend money. Okay, it's not your cash balance. It's not what you have in a fund. It's just you have your cash balance. Your appropriation is your approval to spend a certain amount of that cash balance. So in this case, the statute clearly says that you can spend it without an appropriation. All right, so it means that you can spend it at your discretion, but it does, however, limit what you can spend it on. Okay, so it talks about, again, merchandise for resale to inmates through the commissary. So this would be, you've sold a bunch of your commissary, you're going to purchase more. That's what you can use that commissary money for. It's to keep that commissary sales ongoing. That's the whole purpose of it, is to provide those goods to your inmates. So if you needed to restock, you have that inventory, you can use this to do that, obviously. So you can also use it for expenses of operating the commissary. Okay, so facilities and personnel, those are things that it's not limited to those, but it includes those. You can't pay payroll from commissary, so I do want to make sure and state that. If for whatever reason, and there are exceptions where you've got enough commissary and you're going to use this for some of your payroll, you will need to give that money over to the county and pay through regular payroll. It should not be paid through this fund, okay? There's too many taxes and everything else that's going through and W-2s, and you don't want to deal with all of that. You can also spend it with special training on law enforcement for employees of the sheriff department. So if you've got trainings out there, commissary funds can be used for that. Again, equipment installed in the jail. So statute's pretty clear on what you can use it on. It also talks about like other equipment, your vehicles, computers, the software, communication devices. I mean, it lists a lot of things here. So any of these that fall in, that are within the official duties, you can use. You can use it for an activity provided to maintain order and discipline among the inmates in the county jail. You can use it for an activity or program of the sheriff's department. This would be like, it's to prevent, to reduce any kind of occurrence of criminal activity, as it says. So substance abuse, child abuse, domestic violence, drinking and driving, juvenile delinquency. So if you've got programs in there to help do a prevention, that would be something commissary funds could be used for. I don't like moving through my notes at the same time. Okay.
Wait, I got a question.
Oh, yeah.
Using commissary to build a training facility, a building?
To build a training facility? I mean, I would have a hard time thinking that you would have enough commissary money that would be able to afford to build a building. I would think that would be something you would maybe want to look about getting some kind of special purpose tax, things like that. I don't think, again, your whole point of your commissary is to fund the commissary sales. So if you have, a little bit of additional, that's what these are for, but I don't know that you would really ever have enough money for a building. I don't,
Anything like that, you'd have to coordinate with the county because the commissioners would be responsible for any buildings that the county owns, so. Yeah, that's gonna be a little more complicated than equipment.
Most definitely. Okay, so, yes, sorry, I should have given you that. So again, as we're going through the statute, it gives expenses related to the establishment, operation, and maintenance of the Sex and Violent Offender Registry. Okay, so again, if you have expenses related, you can spend commissary money on that. And then the last one is any other purpose that benefits the sheriff's department that is mutually agreed upon by the county fiscal body and the county sheriff. Okay, so this would be something that you have to go to the council and they would need to be in agreement with you if it's outside of the first 8. All right. Again, I keep saying that the commissary is to fund that inventory for the commissary sales. So, you always want to have that. Really, most of these things are in addition to, you don't want to buy a bunch of equipment if you can't spend money on the inventory to resell to your inmates. So it's kind of you just kind of got to think about it that way and how much you've got left over. But another specific thing that it talks about in here is that this money dispersed from this fund. Can you right click? Sorry guys.
Which one?
On the call in.
Okay.
Oh. You can't do it.
I don't have the authority.
Sorry, hold on one second, guys. Okay, I apologize. All right, everybody can see what we got? Okay.
Yes, I can see that.
Okay, so what I wanted to point out here is that money dispersed from this fund, it must be supplemental or in addition to. So it shouldn't replace a regular appropriation that's made to carry out purposes that are listed above. Okay, so it's a supplement. It also goes on to define records and reports. So it does talk about that you maintain a record of funds of receipts and disbursements. We, State Board of Accounts, we prescribe the form for this record. Semi-annually, you're to provide a copy of this record of receipts and disbursements to the county fiscal body. These reports are due July 1st and December 31st of each year. So, I went through the statute. That is, oh, I see something. Oops, it popped up, but it goes away. It's a question.
Under item 2 for facilities and personnel, can commissary be used to purchase gift cards, etc. for sheriff's department employees?
So gift cards get into a little bit different scenario, especially when you're talking about employees. You need to look, and this is more of an IRS thing, but is that considered compensation? If it is considered compensation, there are lots of hoops you have to jump through. There would have to be a county policy someplace that would allow for any kind of gift to an employee. So there's a lot more to consider than just purchasing and giving. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. So we went through the statute. That is what we audit against. So if we, when we come in and do an audit, we look at your we look at your financial records, okay? And so I thought, well, it'd be nice to give you kind of a list of what the records are. So the first thing you have is, again, we prescribe forms. So we prescribe Form 205. That is your ledger, your commissary ledger, okay? We do realize that there are softwares out there that handle all of this and can give you reports. We will always talk about the prescribed form. It does not mean that you can't use an approved electronic ledger. And when I say that, we do not approve softwares, okay? Every software is different. We do not get into a software and approve that software. So if you are moving to a software or you currently went to a software and you've got reports that would take the place of this Form 205 that would have your receipts, your disbursements, and your balances for your commissary fund, then you would need to use that. There's actually in Chapter 1 of any manual that you pick up from us, the very first thing is prescribed forms, and it has a process that you go through to get that report approved. You would do that during the audit. So when the field examiners are in there doing the audit, that is what you would do. You would give it to them and you would get the approval on site during the audit while it's in use, okay? So once you have that, you could use an approved electronic ledger. We will always refer to it as the 205 because, again, there's a lot of softwares out there and all those reports are named differently. And we don't know the names to all those reports. We couldn't possibly. So when you hear us refer to the Form 205, what we're looking for is the ledger. It should have your balances, it should have the receipts that are coming in, the disbursements going out, and the ending balance, okay? What also we're looking for is your receipts. So you should have a duplicate receipt. And again, those are prescribed by us. You'll have those. You should have deposit slips. We need to be able to look at any of that. We're looking for an audit trail. So everything you've posted to your ledger, we have the detail behind all of that. Warrants, checks, those kinds of things. So anything that you're spending out of the commissary, we want to see that you've got those checks. We want to see the invoices that go with it. So like you would turn in a claim to the auditor's office and you have to have those invoices, we expect you to keep them for the commissary as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a claim form per se, but it does have to be all together so that it's easily, again, traceable back to your ledger. With having money outside of the county, you also have a bank account now because you got to have a place to house your money, right? So having a bank account then requires you to do a monthly bank reconcilement, which Lori is going to go over here later on the how-to. Okay, and what we're looking for. So inside with that bank reconcilement, we expect to see your bank statements. We expect you to see a reconcilement that takes that bank balance and agrees it back to what your ledger says you have. You always have to remember that sometimes people hand us the bank statement and say, well, here, this is my ledger. It's not your ledger. That's the bank's ledger. That's the ledger the bank keeps on how much money they're holding on your behalf, where your ledger is the record of the money that you currently have, okay? So it has a track of all your receipts, all your disbursements, even if they haven't hit the bank yet. So we want to see a reconcilement between those two. And with those reconcilements, we want to see any kind of reconciling items. So such as your outstanding checklist, deposits in transit. For you guys, I don't know if there would be any more. There might be some NSF and stuff like that. Again, Lori's going to cover most of that later. So that's really what we're looking for the commissary records. I feel like I'm talking way too fast. Okay. So now we're going to move on to the other half of this, which is inmate trust funds. And again, I really stuck with statute a lot on this because we audit against that, okay? I do want to say one thing, just briefly about the commissary funds, is that there's only one commissary fund that's authorized in statute, and it should be under the control of the sheriff, okay? So make sure that you have control of that, you know what's going on inside of that, and if you have any questions, let us know. All right, so inmate trust funds. Again, this section applies to any county that operates a county jail. Otherwise, you wouldn't have inmates, right? All right, so in the statute, it says that that the sheriff shall hold in trust separately for each inmate any money received from that inmate or from another person on behalf of that inmate. Okay, so it's telling, in statute, it specifically states you must keep a record of this. This is a trust. A trust is what you're holding on behalf of somebody else, okay? Oh, I think I went too far.
You did.
I think I did. Okay, sorry. All right, so if an inmate or legal guardian requests the disbursement from this trust fund, the sheriff may make disbursement for the personal benefit of the inmate, including but not limited to disbursement to the county jail and the commissary. So you're holding an inmate trust, you got your inmate, they have decided they want a Diet Coke from the commissary, you have the authority to take money from the trust account to the commissary to pay for that Diet Coke. Then the statute continues to talk about on their discharge or the release of the inmate, that the sheriff shall pay to the inmate or their legal guardian any balance that's remaining in the inmate trust fund. So that's what a trust fund is, right? You're holding that money on behalf of that person so that they can use it, but it's their money. So when they are released, if there's any money left in that account, it's not the county's money, it's the individual's money. So it should be returned to them. This one's really long, but it really talks about that the sheriff may disperse inmate trust fund or commissary account sums of money for reimbursement if an inmate intentionally destroys county property, okay, including bedding and all of that kind of stuff to recoup your costs. So if you've got an inmate who's being unruly, you can recoup costs from inmate trust funds here. All right, so then we get to the sheriff shall maintain a record of each trust fund's receipts and disbursements. And who should prescribe the form of record? State Board of Accounts. That one was pretty quick and easy. So again, for inmate trust, really, you're holding it. They might be spending some to commissary, so they give over to commissary. And then, if an inmate's released, you would give them back their money. Sounds pretty simple, right? But of course, if you add a ton of inmates in there, it can get a little complicated. So the records here are really, really important. So again, we do prescribe a ledger for this. It is Form 358. This form, again, is receipts. It's got your beginning balance, your receipts, your disbursements, your ending balance, okay? Again, if you do have a software, you could have an approved electronic ledger. You would have to follow the same procedures that we talked about earlier. Go through, again, it's prescribed forms, Chapter 1, any manual that you pick up or look at on our website, even just the county manual, Chapter 1, first thing, prescribed forms. Go through that and have that approved during the audit, all right? Now, the one thing that's a little bit different about inmate trust records is while you do have to keep that ledger, the overall ledger of the ins and the outs, you have to keep an actual subsidiary ledger or just trust ledger of individuals and their ins and outs and balances, okay? You should be able to reconcile both of those together, but it is two separate records, okay, that you're maintaining. Again, with that, you'll keep any receipts and deposits, warrants and checks, all of that, any documentation of an audit trail of the money going into the inmate trust and out. And then again, you would also have a bank account. So you need to have a bank reconcilement, including any of your, and then include any documentation that supports any reconciling items. Okay. The other thing I did want to mention on this is sometimes we do help. So I've had sheriffs, county sheriffs call up and say, hey, we're having trouble getting reconciled, and Lori and I are more than happy to, we can't do it for you, but we're more than happy to sit down with you, look at what you're using, help you figure out what reports you need, that kind of thing. You can email us stuff. One thing I've always noticed is if you are holding counts that are inactive, but they still have a balance, you have to include the inactive and the active, especially when you're using an electronic ledger, okay? So I just kind of wanted to make you think about that. Is there a balance in that account? Because if there is, you've still got to pull it, okay? And sometimes those computer systems let you sort and then they don't give you everything that you need, and maybe that's why you're not reconciled, okay? So these are the two main ones that you guys hold outside. You take in different money. You have your cash book. So we're going to kind of talk about some of these other funds, not the cash book per se. But I wanted to just kind of give you that overall on those two, because those are the ones that we get most of the questions about, are these two. So you take in other fees and stuff. The auditor holds a lot of funds for you guys, for the sheriff. So I thought we'd kind of go in there, look at them, and so you have an idea of what is what. Okay. So we have an accident report fund. I tried to put the fund number, so your fund numbers are part of the chart of accounts, and we prescribe the chart of accounts. So that's also available.
We're very bossy.
We are bossy, aren't we? Statute says so. So it's on the auditor's page because these chart of accounts are what they use, but I wanted to put them here so that you're aware of what that fund number should be. So the first one, I tried to kind of put them in order. I thought it'd be fun. I don't know, I'm an accountant. Accident report fund. So this is a statutory fund. It's defined in IC 92693. It's funded by a copy fee for each accident report, and it's fixed by an ordinance. This ordinance is from the fiscal body, so they fix the amount that you can charge for this, but it has to be at least $5 for each report. Okay. This fund does not require an appropriation, and it can be used for any purpose reasonably related to the keeping of accident reports and records or the prevention of street and highway accidents. So statute pretty clear what's collected, whether or not it needs an appropriation, and how it's used. Oh, it keeps doing that. There we go. Okay. So we have the prisoner reimbursement for incarceration fund 1130. This one is defined in statute 36-1316. I will give you a little clue. Any of our fund numbers that begin with a 1, those are going to be your statutory funds. So just so if you ever see that, you'll know that it's something that was defined in statute. This is funded by a fee established by an ordinance, okay? The ordinance sets the amount of the fee, and those are all outlined in 36-1315. Unless you are the exception, Ohio County, you have your own statute, okay? So appropriation is required for this fund, and it is used for the operation, construction, repair, remodeling, enlarging, and equipment of county jail or juvenile detention center. Now, if you have a balance in this fund that exceeds the amount that's designated up here in these uses, the fund may be used for the cost of care, maintenance, and housing of prisoners. Again, all in statute. All right, so statutory fund 1155. This is your extradition and sheriff's assistance. It is, again, defined. It's a statutory fund, so it's defined in 35-33-14. This one is funded by a portion of late surrender fees, okay? So late surrender fees, they're assessed on a bail agent or a surety that does not comply with IC 2710-12B, and that's to produce a defendant or that an appearance has been prevented. This fee is assessed based on that statute, and the fees are collected and deposited in accordance with 2710-212, which 50% of it goes to the Police Pension Trust Fund, and 50% goes to this Extradition and Sheriff's Assistance Fund. Okay. This fund, again, appropriation is required. So County Council will appropriate it so that you can spend it. The uses of this fund are costs for extraditing criminal defendants, training and equipment for law enforcement officers, other costs incurred by the Sheriff Department. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Okay. So statutory fund 1156. You guys got a lot of funds, just so you know, is the Firearms Training Fund. This is defined in statute 3547-3D. And so this, well, it applies as of June 30th of this year. The law enforcement agency which accepts an application for a handgun license shall not collect a fee from a person applying for a handgun license. But you still may have some money left in there. So what do? It does require an appropriation. If there's money left in there, it should be used to train law enforcement officers in the proper use of firearms or other law enforcement duties, or to purchase firearms related to equipment or body armor for the law enforcement officers employed by the department. Did I see a question?
Yeah, not on mine, unless it came to you only.
I can't see it though. I don't think I have a chat box here. Oh yeah, I do. Oh, because it went privately. Did you mention Vigo has its own ordinance? I didn't. Are you talking about? Oh, I'm assuming that they're talking about this one. Are you talking about the prisoner reimbursement for incarceration fund? Because if you are collecting a fee for that, then you would have an ordinance. I don't know all the individual counties that have an ordinance. When I said the exception to Ohio counties, they have a specific statute that's just a tad bit different than everybody else's statute requiring the ordinance. Let's see if I can leave that up. That doesn't cover anything, right?
No.
Okay, just making sure. Oh, do I have to click back here? Okay. Can't even see. Okay. Got 45 minutes. All right, your misdemeanor fund. So this is a statutory fund. It's 1175. It is defined in these two statutes here. So 1112-11-4 and 1112-11-5. This is funded by the State Department of Correction. Okay. If you go to 1112-11-6 and 1112-11-7, so the two following statutes here, it does give more insight into how much the State Department of Corrections gives each county. There's a formula and all of that. I didn't include that here, but if you're interested, light reading, go check out the statute. So again, this is funded by the State Department of Correction. It does require an appropriation, so County Council would need to approve or give you permission to spend some of that cash balance. The misdemeanor fund can be used in funding the operation of the county jail, jail programs and other local correctional facilities and community-based programs. There's another one. Okay. Regarding, I gotta go back. Okay. Regarding 1156 appropriation of funds, do you ask for the entire balance of the fund at the beginning of the year? How do you know what you need appropriated for the year? Actually, that's a good question. It would be really the same for any fund. So if you were looking at that one, especially that one, because should be no incoming receipts, it's really just what's left in that fund. It's really to only be used for training law enforcement officers. So purchase of firearms, their firearm training. So you need to look ahead to the next year when it's budget time, okay? And are we going to be providing any of those trainings? Are we going to need to purchase any firearms? Figure out what your game plan is. Take a look at that fund. How much money's in that fund? How much money are you going to need to fund those things? That is what you would look at, and then you would turn in your proposal for the budget to get an appropriation. But you wouldn't want to do the entire cash balance. You really need to kind of think about what you're weighing. That's the whole point of the budget, is to make sure that you're only spending what you need to be spending. And that doesn't mean that you can't ask for an additional later on down the road. So if you had, $5,000 and you thought, I only need $1,000 for next year, but some other program came in and it's an additional $500 that would take you above that appropriation, you can always go and ask for an additional appropriation through the year. Did I answer? I gotta get back to where I was. That brings us to Statutory Fund 1208, the Vehicle Inspection Fund. This one is defined in Statute 917-212E. It is funded by an inspection fee of up to $5. Again, this is established by an ordinance at the county, okay? It, again, requires an appropriation, and it can really be used for any law enforcement purpose. That was an easy one. This one was one that I didn't actually have much knowledge about until I put this together. So this is Statutory Fund 1232. This is the Law Enforcement Recording Copy Fee, okay? So this is defined in Statute 51438. It's funded by a fee not to exceed $150. So money from this, by the way, does not revert to the local general fund at the end of the year, so it stays inside this local law enforcement recording copy fee. It does not require an appropriation. You can use it to purchase cameras and other equipment that are used in this recording program for training concerning law enforcement, recording, and to defray the expenses of storing, producing, and copying law enforcement recordings. So basically, your equipment that you need to record and how you store that recording, and then how you train people to use it. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. It's not one that we really see a lot of. Okay, so the Sheriff's Sale Fund. Sorry, my nose is itching like crazy. I put two fund numbers up here because it really depends on how your county does it. You can have your own separate fund, and that would be in 4009. Or it can be run right out of the general fund. So each county does it just a tad bit different. But the Sheriff's Sale Fund is defined in 322973. This is funded by an administrative fee of not more than $200. It is, appropriation is required, and the use of actual cost for the administration of the sale. A lot of times you'll see, if you've got somebody doing it for you, it's kind of an in and out cost thing. Oh, I'm sorry, I've missed a couple questions up here, so I apologize.
And I'm sorry. Hitting everyone would be helpful.
These, I think, say everyone, so I'm not sure.
I haven't gotten one since then.
I didn't see it. Something flashed. So, can recording fee be charged to each recording that needs to be redacted? It is super time consuming. Let me go back and look at it.
Can recording fee
be used? Yeah, the law enforcement. I think you said with the recording copy fee be used for anything that needs to be redacted. I mean, I would think that that would be dealing with storing. I think that would be an allowable thing.
Yeah, I can't imagine we would take expense.
Yeah, I mean, I think it fits in the category of uses, so. Okay, did I go? Oh, sorry, got sidetracked for a second. Okay, so again, you guys all do the sheriff's sale, so really this is just to administer that sale. Okay, that's really what the whole thing is for. You take in money, really just pay it out. There's never really a whole lot left over there, if any at all. Okay. Am I the only one hearing an echo? I'm not sure. If you have two different devices open, you might hear an echo. I'm not sure.
We have one in here on what programs are we allowed to use for the ledger, what software?
Oh, so what programs are you allowed to use? Again, we do not prescribe. We prescribe the forms, but we don't approve the softwares. So I've always told people that they're interested in getting a software, talk to your sheriff's association. Talk to them, see if what other sheriff's departments are using. What do they like? What do they not like? I know there's a few out there that are popular, but I will be honest, there are a lot of different ones. I can't even give you an example at this point. But that's who I would do your research with those who do the same job as you, because they're going to, especially ones that are already using a software, they can tell you, yeah, I like this, but it doesn't really do this. Or, man, this one's great. It has every report. It's super easy to navigate. But I would talk to those. Maybe start with the Sheriff's Association if you don't know any local sheriffs, counties or that are surrounding your county, to get that information.
On the accident fund, is a county ordinance required?
The accident fund, I have to go back.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's what this is for. Yes, the accident report fund is fixed by an ordinance. The ordinance is done by the fiscal body, which is your council, and it has to be at least $5 for each report. Okay. Am I already there? I am already there.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so another fund we have is the Law Enforcement Continuing Education. This one is really a user fee fund, so it would be in the 2500 series. When we talk about user fee fund, especially when we're talking about the financial report, we roll all of those up and just call it user fee fund, but each one should have a separate number on the auditor's ledger. I don't know what your county uses for this fund number, but it would be in the 2500 series. So this one is defined in statute by 333785, okay? It is funded by $4 of the Alcohol and Drug Services program fee, but this is collected by the clerk, okay, under 333758, which is very confusing when I was searching these because the two statutes are, like, two last numbers are flip-flopped. So the clerk actually collects this money, but it does get put into this fund. It does require an appropriation, but it is for law enforcement agency employees training as specified in 528. I will say that the statute following the 333786 does talk about upon receipt of the monthly claims submitted on oath to the fiscal body of the program listed this chapter, the county fiscal body shall appropriate the fund to the program or fund the amount collected for the program. All right. That was fun. But I tried to put those, you know, how it's funded, whether or not it requires an appropriation, and how you use those funds. That's a lot of funds that you have at your disposal to use. I'm not saying they have huge balances. I'm just saying it's a lot of funds. So it's kind of good to kind of know what you've got, what statutes apply. I wanted you to have it at your fingertips. That's why I did each slide that way. But there are other funds that are held by the auditor that might be something the sheriff will use. This is probably, so federal and state grant monies. So we know a lot of you guys go out and get, you know, there's the seatbelt one, there's the Operation Pullover, not my favorite. Those kinds of grants.
Department of Justice grants.
Yep, Department of Justice grants. So they could be federal grants, they could be state grants, and those really do help get programs, you know, to pay for some of the programs that you're doing or to start a program if you're wanting. But when we talk about these grants, what we need to know is that you should not be holding these grants. These grants should be remitted to the county auditor. You will, you know, you might apply for it. You know, your commissioners need to be involved as well, just to know what's going on. But you need to remit to your county auditor the agreement that you guys have, the application that you submitted. If you get an award notification letter, they should get that, and they should get the money. Well, treasurer should actually get the money, but the auditor should be keeping it within their ledger, okay? There's a couple reasons for this. When it comes to grant money, there are a lot of requirements that need to be done, especially when it comes to reporting and spending and all of that. And when we keep all of the grant money together, the auditors know where it needs to go. So it depends. If it's a federal grant, it's going to go in the 8,000 series. If it's a state grant.
How did we lose you?
Am I gone?
You're still here.
What?
I don't know why it's gone.
I don't know either.
They should still be able to see.
Can they still, so they can still see me? Okay, I'm not sure what happened here. So, okay, if it's a federal grant, it should be in the 8,000 series. If it's a state or a local grant, it'll be in the 9,000 series. That way the auditor can account for it, it'll spend it, it's got all the reporting documentations. All of these grants, like I said, require a ton of, there's a lot of compliance requirements, reporting requirements, all of that need to be done. I don't know what just happened. Am I still here?
We lost the PowerPoint.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes, they can hear you.
And they can see my screen.
The screen is the website, not your PowerPoint.
Okay. All right, sorry guys, I am having a moment. I don't know see if, let me stop sharing. Yeah, I want to stop sharing.
It's never done that before.
It has never done that before. I apologize, guys. See if I can get it to come back up.
Yeah, it's back up.
Okay.
Decided you talked long enough.
It said you're done. No, okay. All right. So we talked about those reporting requirements. Federal is a big one. Federal requires to be on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So if you ever had an auditor call you at the beginning of the year because they're filling out their AFR and trying to get their grants and all of that, that's what this is for. They're required to report them. If they're not reported correctly, they're not spent correctly, or the grant requirements are not really done, like they're just spent however they want, that federal funding can be yanked, or it could be forced to be paid back. So it needs to go to the auditor. Still, if it's operation pullover, you've got the grant agreement, you spend it, you'll spend it through them, through the county. So there are two types of grants, and this is kind of important as well. You can either have an advanced grant or you can have a reimbursement grant. So an advanced grant is you get that grant agreement, it's all approved, here's your money. Now spend it accordingly. That's your advance. If it's a reimbursement grant, that means that you spend county money first, and then you submit a claim for reimbursement, and then you get the money back, okay? When you have a reimbursement grant, these must have timely requests. So if they require monthly, sometimes it's quarterly, we're looking to make sure that they are being requested timely. If it is a reimbursement grant, it does require an appropriation, which we're going to go on the next slide. I almost jumped ahead. So for a reimbursement, you're required to have an appropriation because you're spending county money first, okay, and then you're getting that reimbursed to you. If it's an advanced, it's not required. It should include a budget, and you should follow that budget. Again, if you don't, you do risk losing federal funding, okay, or state funding for that matter if it's a state grant. I got half an hour. I got a few things. The fun stuff, probably not. All right. I probably get asked this. Well, I mean, gateway is probably my number one question. But donations is a huge question that comes into us every year, especially this time of year as we get towards Thanksgiving, as we get towards Christmas. We all want to give back to the community. It's all, and it's such a great thing to do that. We have to remember what the money we have is from and what we're using it for, okay? So really, when we talk about donations received, let's talk about you went out and you know, somebody said, you know what, we think you need money to do this, so they give you $100. All right, that money should be put into a donation fund, a separate donation fund on the auditor's records. It can be done one of two ways. Some counties just have one donation fund and they just stick all donations from all departments into it.
Don't recommend that.
I don't recommend that because again, if you've collected money for a donation, the health department's collected money for a donation and it's commingled, whose is whose. That gets kind of, so we would recommend that you would have like a sheriff donation fund, and you would put that inside there. It would require an appropriation, okay, to spend it, and it would follow, you know, the normal claim process when you go to spend that money out of that donation. We always require an appropriation for this, you know, to get it spent. If you did, however, have a donation, a fairly large donation for a very specific purpose, and you put that into its own separate fund and it didn't get appropriated, we probably wouldn't take audit exception to it as long as it was for the designated purpose, okay? But for the most time, if it's for, you know, admin, or you can use it for anything to support the sheriff department, that would absolutely need an appropriation. It's not defined enough. It would have to be very specific.
Like that's for your canine officers.
Yeah. Or I even had like canine, just to purchase a canine itself. Like I know that that's really expensive. Putting in a separate donation fund and having that money set aside, and then that's how they purchase the dog. Okay. So along just getting donations, sometimes you guys like to have fundraisers. It is not really in the county, it's not really county business to raise like money with fundraisers. I mean, people pay taxes to support the county. But if you were going to do a fundraiser, you have to have the express permission of the governing body. This is the commissioners. There should be a policy in place. All of that, they need to allow it before it can go forward. You have to think about internal controls, and you're going to hear a ton about that probably the next day or so.
No, I would say in the next hour you're going to hear something.
You know, internal controls are our favorite. We always like to tell Lori's little secret, and she sleeps with the internal control manual under her pillow. So if you ever have questions, she just absorbs it through osmosis. I think that's the word, right? Yeah, look at that. Look at me being scientific. So internal controls have to be in place because when you're doing fundraisers, a lot of times you're collecting cash. You don't want just everybody collecting cash. You need to know, you need to have controls in place so that that cash coming in stays there. It's, reconciled to whatever you think you have before it's turned over. Chain of custody. That's a great word for you guys. So you need to look and see what internal controls you have in place. If you do a fundraiser and you do it during the day, you need to consider the ghost employment law and make sure that you're in compliance, okay? And again, all proceeds that you would collect from any of this go directly to the county to be put into a donation fund. All right, making donations. This is where everybody's not gonna like me. It's not really me, so again, we talked about, it's that time of the year, you wanna help, what is it? There's the Toys for Tots and there's Coats for Kids and things like that, and they are all such worthy causes. I totally love that everybody wants to do that. The problem being is it's public funds. Okay, even if it gets donated, even if it's a donation that comes in, it then becomes public funds. And so per the accounting and uniform compliance guidelines for counties, public funds cannot be donated or given to other organizations or individuals unless specifically authorized by law. So you need to look to see if there's a statute that supports what you're wanting to do. But most of the time there's not. If we have had some sheriffs who work with not-for-profits and the sheriff just being there sometimes gets people to come out, but the not-for-profit is collecting all of that money and then they're doing a donation or whatever, that's different. So if you're wanting to do something like that, we say get with somebody, work that. But if you are collecting all of the money on behalf of the county, it does become public funds. Okay? Everybody still here? Nobody left?
Still here?
They're still here. Not speaking to me, but they're here. Okay. So as far as the money that you guys keep on hand, really it's commissary and it's inmate trust. Everything you collect through the sheriff's cash book is typically given over to the auditor or the clerk if you collect a cash bond or whatnot. But one other thing that could be is drug buy money. This would be something that you would keep in a separate account. You need to keep an accounting for it. It would still require all of that. But I thought we'd just kind of talk about it a little bit. All right. So if you were wanting to do this, you would, there's a couple of,
Okay. Oops. Would the donation shop with a cop work the same way? Would they become public funds?
So I know that shop with a cop is the cop goes out and shops. What I don't understand is so you would collect those donations and then you would take that money and go spend it? Because if so, then it would still be public funds because you took that money in. See what I'm saying? Where if you had a not-for-profit working with you and they were taking the money and then you just went and showed your support in the program, that would be different because they would have the money, not the county. Make sense? Yep. Okay, I like that. All right, so back to drug buy money. We go from, we go from shop with a cop to drug buy money, it's fine. Our shop with a cop is when we take donations and then spend it at a local store. So again, participate and donate for Toys and Tots. Is this okay? Wait, I'm sorry. I think I skipped something.
Didn't get that one.
All right, sorry guys, it was all blended together. Let me go up one. If we have chosen to do No Shave November and charged officers $20 who wanted to participate and donate to Toys or Tots, is this okay? So this is something where your officers are donating, really donating their money to that. It's not county money, they're actually paying into it that would be different. You're all going together as an office, you're personally giving $20 from your own bank account, and then you're going to donate. We're not going to take audit exception to that because it's not county money. Go down further. Our shop with a cop is when we take donations and then spend it at the local store. Again, you're taking donations. Once you take the donations are now public funds. So once they become public funds, we go back to, unless there's statute that supports giving money to that cause, it really can't be done. Okay. I'm going to come back to this question. Just because it goes a little bit further. This has to do with the drug forfeiture. Okay, let me get through this one and we'll circle back to the drug forfeiture one. So we're going to go from, shop with a cop to drugs. But your drug buy money. If you're wanting to do a drug buy money, you're going to need to get a home rule ordinance set up. Okay, this is defined in 36.1.3. You got to get the ordinance passed. The ordinance should have for the type of program and the associated expenditures within it, okay? Maybe. Oh, I forgot to click over here. Okay. All right, and then drug buy money is going to be kind of like petty cash, okay? So you have to get it established, and it's all prescribed in 36.1.8.2. It's approved by the fiscal body, and there's no appropriation required, okay? Documentation needs to be maintained for every purchase, and then you would periodically file a claim for that money to be replenished. Drug buy money is a little bit different. Normally with a petty cash, I need to buy stamps. I'm going to go to the post office. I'm going to get that, take some cash, pay for it, because I need it right now. I can't wait for a claim. So I go, I get my receipt and my change, I bring that back, put the change into the petty cash and include the receipt, and then you reconcile that, and it should come back to what your petty cash fund is, or what you got it for. With drug buy money, that's a little bit different. If you're paying an informant or whatever, they're not gonna probably give you a receipt, okay, that you've got that. So there needs to be some documentation in place of how much you're giving, who you're giving. There are all kinds of, make sure I put it in here. Lost my mouse. Okay. So you've got to figure out what that documentation needs to be followed. And so I did some digging. We had some other stuff that no longer exists, but I did find that the Office of Judicial Programs does have a financial guide. This includes a section on confidential expenditures. I put the link here because it gives you a really good guide in what kind of documentation you should have for this. So that's what we're looking for to be included with the petty cash, but when you're reconciling the drug buy money to what you've spent. And then once you get really low, you would then submit a claim into the county to replenish that, okay? And if you have questions about it, you can let us know. I will tell you that this guide, it took me to the 2014 guide, and I did look around, and it is the most current guide, financial guide here. So if it does pop up with 2014, it's not old, it's the current one that they are currently using. Okay. When you are, I'm almost done, okay? Okay. So if you have drug buy money, you need to maintain some kind of ledger. Okay, so we don't really prescribe a form for this, but you need to keep how much you got, what's been spent, that kind of thing, so that you're always reconciling that petty cash to that ledger, okay? And again, you need to maintain all the documentation for all the expenditures out of that fund. All right, now I'm going to answer your question, which really isn't drug buy money related, but the question is, once a drug forfeiture has been completed and paid out by an attorney, where can the money be placed? Independent account controlled by the drug division or auditor's controlled account? So, I mean, are we talking about the beginning of the process here? So, are we talking about the court has decided what they're going to do with these forfeiture funds? I guess I don't know which process to go with.
I assume it's after the court has forfeited the money because it's being paid out by the attorney.
Right.
Which is usually the prosecuting attorney.
Okay, so that actually goes, a court order will come out from that, and it will be separated into 3 different things, and it's held at the auditor, okay? They put a part for common school loan, right?
Common school fund.
Common school fund, thank you. Loan, fund, it's the same. It's not the same. It's not the same. So we put some of it there. There is the prosecutor takes a portion, and then the sheriff will have a portion in that. Typically, it goes into the general fund.
Unless there's a drug task force, it can go in the fund for the drug task force, but all of those funds are under the control of the auditor.
Yep.
As far as accounting, obviously the drug task force would determine how their money is spent.
Would that answer that? Oh, we've got more. Expenses to hold a fundraiser. Is that allowable? So you're talking about, is there a fund to fund a fundraiser? Sorry. We're getting real complicated. All right. So again, you'd have to have the express permission of the commissioners on this. If you were going to do it, I do know that it would probably have to be a donation fund for the most part. So if you were doing a fundraiser and it was something that you did annually and they said that was okay, you might keep a fund set up for that, and the money come in, you keep a portion of that to fund next year's fundraiser. We're not going to take audit exception to that, but it's going to depend on where you're paying for those expenses from. When drug forfeiture, man, we're bounced all over. When drug forfeiture money is released by the court in our county, that money goes into the law enforcement fund that is held by the auditor's office. A portion of it should. A portion of it should. Okay, I don't have any more on mine.
I don't have anything after that one.
All right, I'm going to end up a little early unless you guys want to ask me some more questions. Put this up here for a moment while you guys think and maybe type me some more questions. But I told you earlier, contact information for us. Again, this is the county's email. This is the joint email box that Lori and I both share. It's always our first stop. So if you have any questions that come through, we always start in this box and go forward. And that's also the phone number. If you call that number, you'll get one of the lovely ladies here in the office. And if one of us is available, they will send your call to us or take a message and we will try and call you back as soon as we can. We try and do it within the same day, but there are times that doesn't happen. But we do try and respond to you within the week, even if you send an email. You have to remember that we take questions from sheriffs, auditors, treasurers, clerks, recorders, counsel, commissioners, judges, prosecutors, attorneys. Am I missing anybody?
Park department,
concerned citizen. So we do get a lot of questions, and we are more than happy to help. And we try to get back to you in a timely manner because sometimes we know you need something a little bit more quickly. So just bear that in mind. But as far as that comes the end of my wait. I got some more. Okay. Questions can keep coming. I've got 15 minutes left, guys. I'll answer whatever I'll try to answer whatever we got here. All right, it says you say drug forfeiture money goes into several different funds. What statute refers to that? Do you know? I've been talking to our sheriff and auditor and county attorney about this and would like to be able to send them that statute. I don't know it off the top of my head, but hold on.
She does have it. Let me see which one I put it in.
I have it, but I have to go off the screen.
It's in Indiana Code 34-24-1-4.
34-24-1-4?
Yes.
All right, I just put it in the chat. Just in case, didn't get rid of it. 34-24-1-4. You think we'd know that? So if you do call for a statute, I have to look it up. Lori is my go-to person when we're You guys have any other questions about funds or anything we've just kind of covered in the last hour and 21 minutes? Keep watching. You will see this contact one up again probably tomorrow.
It's also on the website.
Sorry, I actually unmuted myself. Yeah, it is.
We sent a check to an individual and that person lost the check. What is the correct procedure to resend another check?
Okay. Sorry, I got an email at the same time and it blocked my window. Oh, I know, right? Okay, I see a question about appropriations coming in too. Okay, so you said somebody lost the check. So what is the proper procedure? Okay, so you're going to want to put a stop payment on that check before you reissue another one. Otherwise, if they find that check, now they've got twice the amount of money. Okay, so you put a stop payment on that. And then once you get that done, then you could reissue another check. I'm trying to make my chat. Can I pop this out? Sorry, my chat box is tiny. I'm having a hard time. Ah, look at that. It's beautiful. Okay. All right. Okay, got that. Question about appropriations. All right, which question? I have an approved appropriation from a specific fund from a grant. Then the auditor decided to pay for this from a different fund without consulting our department. Can the auditor do this at their discretion? Not sure why they wouldn't have paid it from the grant fund and why they would have changed it after you. So you've submitted a claim and you've submitted it for this fund and that appropriation, right? If possible, then what's the point of the appropriation process? Well, the appropriation process, again, is a approval to spend the cash that's in the fund, okay? An auditor is not, well, they should not be writing any kind of checks if there's no appropriation available if the fund requires an appropriation. So in this case, I think I need a little bit more information. Normally when you submit a claim and you tell them where you want it to come from, they may question it if it's not proper per that fund, because they are looking to see, they have to audit the claim that you submit. But I'm not really understanding why they would have changed it without communication with you, because you need to be able, for your funds, even your grant funds, you need to be able to keep track of what you're spending and how you're spending it. So it may be just a conversation or a misunderstanding someplace. It says we had money available in the account. They changed to so it was technically available. Yeah, but normally when it's a grant, that's very specific. So to not pay that, I'm just not sure. Sorry if you answered this, as I had an employee come in. Is expenses for a fundraiser to raise needed funds allowable? Okay, yeah, we did. But when we talk about it again, so basically you're wanting a fund to fund your fundraiser, right? Really, we're thinking about the only way that would be a donation fund. So when you're taking in money from a fundraiser, putting a little bit aside to do another fundraiser, would be the best bet for that. Anything that you spend from public funds needs to have a county purpose. So we're going to look for you to tie that purpose back to that. Okay, you said gift cards were difficult due to IRS. What about a ham or gift basket paid from commissary for the holiday for employees? Again, you're giving them something. It's a gift. Don't think about it just as a gift card. Think about it as a gift itself. At what point does a gift become compensation? You need to kind of look at that. You'd have to talk to the IRS. That's an IRS issue, not an us issue. I'm just giving you a fair warning on it. You need to look at that to see, because again, they're getting something above and beyond what they're being paid. Okay, so when does it cross that line of compensation? There needs to be some kind of policy on whether or not, county policy on giving any kind of gift to an employee. So again, there's more to it than just, can I give it to them?
And it would not be item 2 in the list. I think that was one of the original questions, because it's not a cost of running the commissary. It would have to be under 9. The council would have to approve it.
Okay. Why do you ask for an appropriation of funds that you have raised the funds? Reports, VIN checks. All the funds can only be spent on specified items out of those counts. Why do you have to ask for those funds? So that's statutory. So basically you have to have an appropriation unless statute says otherwise, okay? That is, the council's role is watching the finances of the county. So they do the budgets to make sure that you've got enough money in those funds to support you, not just next year, but the following year and the year after that. Okay, it is it's a budgetary measure. It's to make sure that spending is being tracked accordingly. So I guess that's the best way I can do it. So yes, it tells you what you specifically can spend it on, but that way the county is kind of monitoring how much you're spending out of it. So you wouldn't want to be spending all of your funds to zero every year, because you wouldn't be able to fund moving forward. Okay, so just be like, when you're, even your personal, you try and watch what you spend when you can, because you want to be able to do something in the future. I don't have any more on mine. Any other questions? I've only got about 2 minutes before I have to turn it over and you get to talk about reconciling. Reconciling's fun. I like to reconcile. In fact, I don't get to do a lot of it anymore being here, but sometimes I've worked with some sheriff's departments, and they'll send me stuff and I get to kind of look at it. And, if you're an accounting nerd like me, you enjoy things like that. Okay, I don't see anything else coming in. So we are she's writing down these questions. We're gonna try and get them all put into the bulletin for you so that you can come at them again. We might combine a couple of them that are similar just to make it one question. But with that being said, that ends me today. And I get to turn you over to Lori. You guys get to talk about reconciling. So let me get you up and going. Can I put you back over there? All right, Lori, you should be good to go.
So I should be able to share.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we do that thing now? Share.
It's a little different.
Okay, I think, is that what we're seeing then?
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna get started then. I'm gonna talking about posting, ledgers, reconciling, accounting, audits, all that kind of bookkeeping sides of this. So we're dealing with the funds that Ricky's already talked about, but we're gonna really focus on the funds that you have to specifically have accounting records for during an audit, which is your commissary and your inmate trust. I'm going to start off by saying if we were looking at a mission statement for the Sheriff's Department, keeping immaculate financial records is not going to be on it, and we get that. We're accountants, we come in, we laser focus on these financial records, but your department does a lot more than that. I mean, your focus is public safety for an entire county. You are elected to oversee that public safety as a sheriff. It is the highest priority. Unfortunately, part of that job comes with administration, which you found out, and part of that administration comes with dealing with the public funds. Because you are a collection point for the county and you deal with public funds, you have to track those public funds. That's a requirement in statute, as Ricky's already gone over. So even though we are really laser focusing on that, we get the big picture. And so sometimes it doesn't seem like it. The fact that you have adjustments or things you need to make on your bookkeeping does not reflect on your department as a whole, just one very small portion of it. And we also realize that, you know, being an outstanding law enforcement officer and having a wonderful background on that doesn't always prepare you for a financial background. And often you rely very heavily on your matrons and your bookkeepers and the people that you hire to keep these records. And part of the reason we wanted to use this virtual format, which we learned to do during COVID, is that it allowed us to get out to the most people possible and put the least strain on your departments, having the most. We didn't have to have a lot of people in travel status, we have to shut down whole departments. We were trying to get access to the people that we can deal with that actually are dealing with the financial records. And again, get faces with names, get information we hopefully is useful out to you, and get you more comfortable in talking to us about questions that you have. So I'm going to do just a little bit of background on who we are, in case you're not totally familiar with State Board of Accounts. We are the audit agency for the state of Indiana. We do all of the audits in Indiana for governmental units. We were created as an agency in 1909, so we've been around a while. And we were created because there was widespread fraud at the time. In government, at all levels of government, local government, state government, all the way through. The public had pretty much lost confidence in government, and the legislature saw a need to create an entity that would look into financial activity of government and report back publicly on what was found. And we have a mission statement, which is that we are dedicated to providing the citizens of the state of Indiana with complete confidence in the integrity and financial accountability of state and local government. For that, to fulfill that mission, we audit. We audit all of the governmental units, and that includes the counties, including all of the departments within the county, the cities and towns, schools, townships, state agencies, universities, libraries, and special districts. As a department of the county, we look at your office specifically. You are a collection point, what we call a collection point in the county, because fees that travel to the county and end up on the funds ledger, just as Ricky talked about, some of those fees start at your office. And in addition, you keep funds that are held outside of the county level, those commissary and inmate trust funds. You oversee sheriff sales for forfeited assets and foreclosed properties. You collect tax warrants, you sort of process. There's a lot of ways that money is running through your department. There's a lot of financial activity, and that financial activity, because it's public funds, has to be tracked. So we almost always include the sheriff department in our audit of the county. Audits are done by our field staff. Ricky and I no longer audit, although both of us have been field examiners. We have audited counties and cities and towns and all of the others in the list. During 2020, we learned how to audit remotely because we had to. And we have maintained some of that remote auditing. So you will find in audits this year and going forward that we don't quite as much camp on your doorstep for an extended period of time. I think right now we are trying to be on site at least 2 days and doing some remote work that we can do the other 2 days. Although we're flexible, we might be there more. I'm not saying we won't be there more than 2 days, but at least 2 days, depending on what we're looking at. And again, you work with your field staff on what your needs are with that. Ricky and I, as she mentioned, we focus on counties. That's our specialty. We are part of a director's unit. There are 6 of us, and we have a supervisor over the 6 of us that deal with all of those units. So we have 2 that deal with schools and townships, and we have another 2 that deal with the cities and towns and special districts and libraries. And then we have state assignments that deal with a lot of the state audits and the universities. So as the field is out there, they will answer questions for you if they can, especially if they're quick questions. If it's will this form work? They're going to look at your forms. They're going to be giving you guidance on internal controls, things like that. If it's a research question, if it's something that's going to take some time, we really want them to focus on the audits and get those done as efficiently as possible, move on. We do not have the staff currently to do all of the audits that are required to be done. In fact, we've had to contract out due to the amount of federal assistance that came out with CARES and with the American Recovery Plan, just to try to keep up. And so we do tell our field staff to kind of stay focused on the audit. So if there are questions that take a little bit longer, they're going to send you up to us. Do not feel that they're passing the buck, but that's what we've asked them to do. And that's what Ricky and I do. We're more than willing to dig in, do the research, get you the answers that you need on something. So you can come directly to us, but if you go to the field and you have a field auditor there and they're sending you on to us, that's the reason why. Okay. We are providing the technical assistance. So again, answering questions, doing the training like today. We write the bulletins, we create the manuals, work on the website as a unit. And really, we're here to assist you. We're the part of the agency that liaisons with the officials, with the local units. And so we're here to assist you any way we can. And so we're always trying to be available to you for that. Okay, Ricky spoke about statute. Statute is very important, state law. We audit against that. Under statute, we are required as an agency, the State Board of Accounts is required to prescribe the accounting records for all of the governmental units and to issue our audit standards that everyone must follow. These are called our Uniform Compliance Guidelines. These standards can be found in our manuals and in our bulletins. We are working, as Ricky said, to get comprehensive central guidance, whether it's another chapter in our county's manual or a separate manual for sheriffs, which we plan to have on the schedule be done by the end of the year. Currently, we do have the web page for the sheriffs, which has pulled as much what the information we have right now together and has like the presentations. That page will stay. That's not going away. Any finding that you have during an audit is going to be based on a statute, a uniform compliance guideline, or possibly a federal grant or federal regulation. Okay, there's going to be something in writing that we're going to tie it back to. I know sometimes you feel like we come in and just look for things to write up, which really isn't true because we don't like to write things up. It takes longer. But if we have a finding, it's going to tie back to something specific, or the finding itself is going to refer to the criteria. And that criteria is always going to be statute, uniform compliance guidelines, local, or can be a local ordinance. I didn't mention that. If you have a local ordinance or policy that you're not following, it can tie to that. A grant agreement or grant requirements or federal requirements over federal assistance. We do issue new bulletins each quarter. Ricky showed you where to sign up for the eGov or for the Gov delivery so that you can receive information when those bulletins come out. So we really encourage you to do that so that we have your current emails and get that information out. And so she also mentioned we are required to prescribe the forms, but those prescribed forms can be, an alternate form can be used to replace the prescribed form. This is especially true when you have software, which automates it, and most everyone has software now that automates it in some form. I'm not saying everyone does, because I have still audited, well, at least 7 years ago when I was auditing, I have audited cash books, you know, big old cash books. But the software systems that you adopt often will print out reports that provide the same information that the prescribed form does. You need to make sure that you're tying to it so you know which report or reports replace the prescribed form, because as she said, we don't know all the names of the reports. So when our field comes in, they're not going to know what to ask for. They're going to say, what's your ledger? And you may not know what they're asking for. So if we're saying, you know, what's the form 205, you should know this report takes the place of this, of the commissary ledger, or this report and series of reports takes the place of the inmate trust ledger, and be able to provide that. But it is possible. You are not required to do manual records if you have software that can automate the system for you. So audits for the counties are usually done annually. It's possible that for some of the smaller counties it may be done less often than annually. One of the requirements that we look at for doing an annual audit is federal assistance. Currently, the federal requirements are that if your county disperses more than $750,000 in federal assistance as a unit, as a county, you are required to have what they call a single audit, which is a federal audit along with your financial audit. There were some smaller counties that did not meet that threshold, but with the CARES Act money and with the American Recovery Plan, almost every county exceeded that. They did not change that 750,000 standard, so almost everybody's got that. So even if you were not being audited annually for the next few years, you can probably expect to be done annually. So the purpose of the audit, the first purpose, is to issue an audit report, and that's an audit of the financial statements of your county. Your financial statements are your portrait, basically, or financial report of where your county is at that point in time and what your transactions were for the year then ended. And we put an opinion on that that goes along with the report that we issue that says, hopefully says, that the information, that the financial information that's presented in this report is materially correct. And that is telling the readers of that financial report that they can depend on that the information in there is correct for all material. So there might be a few immaterial rounding or small errors that might have been overlooked, but overall that is the correct financial position for the county as it has been reported. Okay, that is very, very important. Those audit reports are read by bonding agencies, by financial institutions. If you're going for that, it is read by the federal government when they're looking at awarding grants. It is read by your citizens. It's read by the legislator. There are a lot of readers of those financial statements. We also issue a compliance report with that, and that is for, again, compliance with federal law, statute, uniform compliance guidelines, and local ordinances. It's a supplemental report, and in that supplemental report, we issue non-compliance. So it's a negative report in and of itself. So if your department is not in that report, that is a good thing. Doesn't mean your office was not audited. It means that we did not find anything during the audit that was significant enough to report in a written report. There can be verbal comments, there can be management letters, which are sent to you and your governing board, but not issued publicly. The audit report is a public report, so that is available to all of the public. It's on our website, anyone can read that. But if you are not in there, again, don't assume that you were not audited. It just means that there were no material findings or significant enough findings that we had to report that. Okay. We do not audit 100% of transactions every year. we could not, I mean, we'd be living with you, we could not get done. And there was one point, I think, when we did way back in the day in the early 1900s, but there's just simply too many transactions. So we sample, so we pick, and so we don't do every department every single time. Although for sheriffs, because you're a collection point, because you have funds outside of the county, you are often almost always included in that, just so you're aware of that. But it is possible that you might not be audited 1 year, depending on your size or the financial amount of your transactions that you report. At the end of the audit, for the compliance, if we do have findings, we will let you know that. We should be letting you know all along. So as your staff is in there working on your the audit, the compliance portion for your department, they should be talking to you. If they are finding issues, they should be letting you know. Because again, sometimes they're verbal. They might just say to you, hey, this isn't a big deal, but I need to make you aware of this. This is something that could become a bigger deal. You need to look at this, kind of make corrective action on this. There may be something they don't feel is reportable enough that might go into a management letter. Again, they're going to let you know that. And there may be things that they say, this is significant enough, it is going to be in the audit report itself. You will have a formal exit with the audit staff where they will give you that information. You have the option to respond to any comments during an audit at that time. Encourage you to do so. Any response that you have specifically to those comments will be included in the audit report. You can say whether you agree or disagree, what kind of corrective action you're going to take. It's an option there. It's not something you have to do, but it's something you can do, just so you're aware of it.
I have a question. What enforcement action, criminal or civil, if the office does not follow the guidelines?
Enforcement action. We are a reporting agency. We are not a law enforcement agency. We are not an enforcement agency. So there are no criminal charges. There are financial consequences. If the county does not comply with providing financial information, you may not get your budget. I mean, it's not something you want to do. But basically, we are reporting whether or not, if you have a non-compliance issue, if you say, I don't care, I ain't fixing it, it's on you. If it is a repeat comment, which means we come in at least 2 years in a row and we find the same thing, we are required then to report that to the audit committee, which is a part of the General Assembly. And there are specific things in statute, it's in 511-127, no.
I don't think that's right.
Where there are things that you may have to come and speak to the audit committee, explain why you choose not to comply. It may be something, if you genuinely think the law is incorrect, it may be something you can say why it's incorrect, and they may take it under advisement to change the law. I don't know. But as far as that goes, there's no criminal.
We do work with other law enforcement agencies, so there are divisions within the State Board of Accounts that do work with, like, the state police, maybe your prosecutor's office. If there is something, it's not really those small compliance things. It would be something bigger, like theft,
yes,
misappropriation of funds, or there have even been things where, like, if you're not necessarily, but like the elected official not doing any of their job.
Well, yeah, malfeasance, non-feasance, misfeasance of duty.
But we know.
We would not. It would be up to the prosecutor to take criminal. We would not file any criminal charges. It would be up to the prosecutor to file any criminal charges.
Okay, that's a good question, though.
Some of these we've already talked about, but I'll just go over them a little bit. So what are we looking for when we come into audit? We talked about some compliance requirements. So I've listed some here. Some Ricky has already talked about. Using the designated depositories, that is in Indiana Code 513.8. Again, you have to use depositories that are designated for your county. Your Board of Finance sets those up and approves those. All of those depositories have to be on the approved depository list of the Department of Treasury's Board of Depositories, because they are insured buy a state insurance, the Public Depository Insurance Fund, which is above and beyond what the federal insurance is. And so sometimes we've seen where maybe a local credit union or a small community bank may not be on that list. They can be added. They need to talk to the treasurer's office about getting added if they want to get added. But public money has to be in an approved depository, so it has that extra level of protection. Okay. Daily deposits, it's in 513.6, and that's where you need to make sure if you have a collection that you're getting it to the bank on a daily basis. If you are away from the bank or through the auditors, you can have deposits up to $500 that you can hold without deposit. You're responsible for it, so you need to make sure it's secure. But once it reaches 500, it needs to get to the bank. Indiana Code 5-13-5-1 states that every public officer who receives or distributes public funds shall keep a cash book in which the public officer shall enter daily by item all receipts of public funds. You receive public funds, and so you must keep a cash book, and Ricky talked about that. You do have to maintain the cash book. You have to balance that cash book daily to show funds on hand at the close of each day. That cash book is a public record and is open to inspection in accordance with 514.3, which is public records law. And statute does define public funds, and these are all fees and funds of whatever character coming into the possession of any public officer by virtue of that office. So it's a pretty broad category of what is considered public funds. During an audit, we're going to ask to see your cash book. We will look over the year's entries. We will see that it has been maintained and that it is reconciled. Indiana Code 5-13-6 has a provision for monthly bank reconcilements. It's in statute. You have to reconcile to the bank each month. We will be auditing any bank accounts that are held by the Sheriff's Department. We expect to see that they are reconciled each month to the financial records maintained. We're going to go over reconcilement today. And we will, but we just be aware that we do look at this during audit, nothing else, even if we don't redo any of them. We go to make sure you had 12 or 14 reconcilements during the year, that all of those have been completed. For the fees that are collected, those have to be remitted to the county auditor and treasurer on the report of collections, and this must be done monthly. This is a uniform compliance guideline, which means it's not coming from statute, it's coming from our uniform compliance guidelines, but again, it can be a finding if you are not in compliance. What this does is get those fees into the proper funds that we just discussed. Until they're in the county funds, they can't be used. So you need to make sure they're turned over and posted properly. We do audit monthly reported collections, and we do tie those back to the cash book and make sure everything's flowing the way it should. Okay, internal controls. My personal favorite. They might put a stopwatch on me or smack me a couple times to get me to stop. But if you learn one thing about Ricky and I, it's this: we love our internal controls. And not many people do, including our field staff, understand that love. But I'm hoping over time you will like them a little bit as you understand why they're important. So why should you care? First of all, statute requires you to care. Indiana Code 511-127 requires local governments to adopt minimum internal control standards and to train all personnel on those internal control standards. This should have already been done. So your counties have already adopted this, and your staff has been trained on this. Your auditor keeps these certifications for each person that has been trained. Those certifications are provided for audit. We do have to see those. If you have new personnel, you've hired a new bookkeeper coming in, that person needs to be trained on internal controls and sign that certification and get it over to the auditor. Does every employee in a county have to train on internal controls? The answer is no, not every employee. We're working with the auditors on this because I think we may have gone a little too far in that area. But the statute does tell you who needs to train, and that's any officer or employee whose official duties include receiving, processing, depositing, or otherwise having access to funds that belong to the federal government, state government, or a political subdivision. So if you have someone in your office that doesn't have anything to do with the money, they don't need to be trained on internal controls. But if they are receiving or making deposits or posting ledgers or in any other way accessing those funds, and this would include if they're doing payroll claims, if they're doing claims over to the county for that, they have to be trained in internal controls. So I'm going to give you the real brief, down and dirty internal controls. We could talk about it all day. You really don't want that. So there are 5 components to internal controls. They all have to be working in order for internal controls to work as a whole. By the way, we have a manual on this, which Ricky's already alluded to, and no, it is not under my pillow right now. The purpose of the internal control process is to provide reasonable, not absolute, reasonable assurance that the mission and objectives of an organization will be achieved. So this purpose includes the reduction of risk associated with fraud, as well as a safeguard of resources against loss due to waste, abuse, mismanagement, or errors. Internal controls provide a check and balance system over operations, promoting operational effectiveness and efficiency. A system in sufficient internal control produces reliable financial and management data, ensures accuracy and timeliness in reporting, and promotes compliance with laws. As I said, reasonable does not mean absolute. There is no absolute assurance. Even with stellar internal controls, mistakes and fraud can still occur. But with good internal controls, the chances of detecting and correcting or preventing those errors increases significantly. So the 5 components. The first is control environment, and this is the tone at the top. This is for the commissioners for the county, but it's also for each elected officer for their particular department. You set the tone for your department. If you have someone running a department that really doesn't care whether the rules are followed, whether the procedures are followed, whether the work gets done properly or not, it's probably not going to get done. And it's probably not going to get done well if it gets done at all. That filters down to each employee. You end up with a department of people that don't care if it's done correctly or not, or again, if it even gets done or not. So they might do what's easiest, they might do what benefits them personally. We just cannot all underestimate the control at the top. And that really is just your personal, I think as a sheriff, you would totally understand this. Your personal integrity is on the line here, and this is something that you stand for. Risk assessment is the process of looking at a particular process and determining the risk that your goals will not be achieved. It's kind of a brainstorming step. So what is the risk that deposits won't be made timely? I said, what are the audit steps we're going to look at? Are your deposits being made timely? So what's the risk that it won't happen? What's the risk that bank reconciliations aren't being done monthly? What is the risk that the cash book won't be maintained on a daily basis? What is the risk that the supporting documents for the commissary purchase aren't retained or properly attached to the payment documentation? You have to identify the risks in order to address them. Internal control is an iterative process. As a situation changes, as your department, new employees, new software, new rules, you have to be able to adjust your policy and procedures to address those risks. So you're always questioning that. What's the risk? How do we address it? Control activities are the policies and procedures that you implement to address the risks you identified. For example, if the risk is that a bank reconciliation may not be done each month, which is a compliance requirement, you establish a control that you will review and sign off on each bank reconciliation and maybe keep a log to document that it's been done. Just saying. I'm saying that's what has to be done. I'm saying that could be done. Okay. If there is a risk that a collection may not be counted properly, you might establish a control that 2 people count and verify the collection and both sign and initial the receipt. If there's a risk that not all commissary receipts are being kept and organized properly, you might have a second employee review the disbursements and documents for the month and make sure that all the supporting documents are present. These are just ideas. This is brainstorming. We can't write your internal controls as much as we'd like to, It violates an auditing standard of the industry. We cannot, as your audit agency, which we still are, even though we're the technical service part of it, we are your audit agency. We can't audit our own work. So if we were to write your controls, we couldn't do your audits. And although you may think that's not a bad thing, it is. We really want to make sure that we keep our audit process going. But what we can do is we can help with brainstorming. So if you have a specific question, if something doesn't seem to be working and you just can't figure out how to get around it, or if you want to say, well, you think this would be good enough or not good enough, or you just want to think a process through, we'd be glad to talk to you. You can bounce ideas off of us. There's never any problem with that. I mean, again, we can talk for hours on internal controls, so you will never be bothering us with that. But and the bottom line of this is, you know your department, you know your people, you know your resources. We don't. So all we can really do is give you some ideas or play devil's advocate maybe, but really you're the best person to design. You and your staff are the best people to design the internal controls for your office. Information and communication. This is how you make sure your staff is aware of what those internal control procedures are. How do you know that the reports you are reading are relevant and accurate, that they're up to date, that they're not missing 4 months worth of activity? So that the information you're getting is the most current and relevant. Having open lines of communication about processes and policies helps keep your internal controls relevant and effective. On the other side, we have had people actually call up and say, we do this, da-da-da-da-da. Why? Well, why do you do it? What do you think the purpose is? And after we talk through them, there is no purpose. It's just busy work. You don't need busy work. You have enough work to do. So if it does not serve a particular purpose, don't keep doing it. So keep your controls relevant. Monitoring has how you help to ensure or follow up to ensure that the controls are working. So spot check that the procedures are being followed. You don't have to do every single procedure. Your bookkeeper doesn't have to do every single control. But make sure that somebody is spot checking, that everything is getting done and addressing any issues where it's not. If somebody's behind, it happens. People get behind. How are you going to get caught up? When do you plan to get caught up? Making sure that you're not finding out that they're 12 months behind instead of a month or two. And again, there is more information on our website on internal controls, including a wonderful manual that I helped write. So during the audit, we will be looking at your internal controls. We do not place an opinion on that. We don't write your internal controls are good or bad, but we look at your internal controls. We ask you questions about them. We interview you. We may ask you to fill out questionnaires about receiving, posting, depositing, dispersing, who does what, how many people are involved, who does the checks, who does the final reviews. But expect that. That's going to happen. If there is no segregation of duties, that is like our gold standard of internal controls. And what I mean by that, if there is a situation where one employee receives, posts, deposits, reconciles, that's a significant deficiency. You've got one person handling the entire process. And so that person can make a mistake and just human nature. They're not going to find it to correct it. And worse, they can deliberately misappropriate funds and no one's overseeing it to make sure that that isn't happening. And as much as we'd like to think that would never happen in the Sheriff's Department, we've audited long enough to know that it does happen in Sheriff's Department's funds to get misappropriated. So having someone else in that process, having that segregation of duties and that oversight and review is very, very important. And another part of that same statute in 511-127, I want to point out, does require that you report any erroneous or irregular material variances, losses, shortages, or thefts from the political subdivision to State Board of Accounts. Even if you're on it, even if you're going to correct it, you still have to report it to us. It's in the statute. And material, if your county has issued a materiality policy, you have to check with your auditors, whether one has been issued. If not, it's zero, which is annoying because that means every dollar. But if they've issued a materiality policy, it'll tell you how much that you need to report to us. within that, but just keep that in mind. Even like I said, even if you're on it and you're going to get it corrected in the next 2 weeks, you still have to report those to us. Okay. So we've already established that you are a collection point. You have money coming in and you are holding money and are responsible for that money. You have to account for all of that money. It's not just enough that it flows through your office. You have to be able to account for it. As a collection point for the county, you collect fees, and Ricky talked about a lot of those with the funds, the accident report fees that are remitted to county, deposited in the county fund. You're responsible for those fees from the point you collect them until you turn them over to the county treasurer and submit that report of collection. So if they're missing, it's your department that's on the line for that. So you want to make sure that you are implementing procedures that make sure that those are properly receipted, that custody of them is secure until you get them to the bank and then posted in the cash book and then receipted in that report of collections. At the point that you write that check, take it over to the treasurer and get your treasurer's receipt, then custody transfers to the county treasury at that point. The cash book is how you account for those fees until they're remitted each month. So you have an accounting cycle for collection that includes the assessment of the fees. Then you receive the fees. You must safeguard those upon collection. So you have a cash drawer or something set up that's secure in your office. You might have a safe someplace or a locked drawer or something. You're keeping it at night if you're not getting it to the bank the same day. You need to reconcile your records. So you take, these were my today's collections. This is my deposit. I'm reconciling that collection back to that, to what I have posted in my cash book. Again, you're safeguarding those collections at least monthly. You're reconciling the records within your cash book. This is the total amount I collected. You're transferring that information to a report of collections. And then you're taking that report of collection and that payment to the county treasurer, and that completes the collection cycle for those fees and other collections that run through the cash book. Okay. However, you're also collecting other money that you are accounting for differently. And so those are the commissary funds and the inmate trust. Those are accounted for solely at the sheriff department level. Disbursements from the commissary are for the most part at the discretion of the sheriff. Possibly you have to get the council involved in some situations. The inmate trust collection disbursements are all handled at the department. But these are also collections that you will be audited for, and you will need to maintain records. That's probably the biggest, I would say the biggest hurdle we have heard in auditing, that is the hardest to overcome if you have not kept a ledger at all. And believe it or not, we have heard it where they come in to do, the audit for the records, and here's our box of receipts and here's our bank statement, but there's no ledger. You have to post them to a ledger. Now, a ledger is basically a running account of all of your receipts, your disbursements, and your balances. It's just keeping track of it every day. And at a given point in time, and it sounds like that should be very simple, but at the end of the year, that's a lot of transactions. You don't want to have to create that in December when you've been collecting from January forward. And that's what the ledger does, is it keeps track of that for you, and you must keep a ledger. And then those ledgers, those records, have to be reconciled to the bank each month. The commissary account fund to the commissary bank account, the inmate trust to the inmate trust account. Okay. And we're going to go over kind of an exercise in that to show you what I mean by that. So it is a lot to keep track of. You have the cash book and the basically three ledgers. Your ledger of receipts, disbursements, and balances for commissary. Then you have a control ledger for the inmate trust, and you have a detail ledger for the inmate trust. Okay. The cash book is a daily record of your collections at the sheriff department. We do have a prescribed form for that, which is County Form 54. It's a big old form. You probably have financial software to track your collections, and that can produce a report that takes the place of the prescribed Form 54, and that's fine. and you've probably already been through an audit, it's probably already been reviewed. We are not going to discuss posting the cash book, because when we talk about posting the commissary and inmate trust, it's the same process, it's just a different form that you're filling out. But if you have specific questions about it, be sure reach out to us at any time. We'll be glad to talk about that. And as I said, the commissary must have a ledger. It must have its separate ledger. It cannot be your bank statement. It can't be a check register, which only shows disbursements. It has to be a complete ledger, which has both receipts, disbursements, and balances in it. The Form 205 is the current prescribed form for the commissary fund. We're going to be going over how to post that form at the end of the PowerPoint. And again, if you have financial software that tracks your commissary fund, and many departments do, you need a report that provides the same information as that Form 205. And so you need to know what form it is that takes the place of the 205 in your department. Again, the inmate trust ledger has two components. The control ledger tracks the fund in total. That's the control ledger, is what's reconciled to the bank. So it's the total amount of the receipts, disbursements, and balances for all of the inmate trusts as a total. Okay. And then as a total, it also has a detailed ledger. And at any given point in time, if you total up all of the detailed ledgers, they should match the control ledger. The biggest problem we see with this is probably where there are old, unidentified amounts from maybe an earlier software or an earlier thing that you're not really sure what they are, that has just been kind of a legacy that's been carried forward and gets stuck in there. And if you have that, contact us, because it's not going to go away on its own, believe me. It's always going to be there. You have two reporting requirements. Semi-annually, a report must be submitted to the county council on the commissary fund. And the report is for the 6 months just ended, shows the beginning balance in the fund, the receipts, disbursements, and ending balance. The Form 205 is the prescribed form for this report, but if you have a report generated by your software that has the same level of detail, it can be submitted in place of the 205 to your council. These reports are due on July 31st and December 31st. And there is one other report that the department must provide, and that is the supplemental annual financial report to the county auditor in January of each year. And we were going to go over that specifically tomorrow, so we're not going to go over that today. So any collections into the sheriff department that are not inmate trust and commissary will be posted to the cash book. So this is going to be things like your tax warrants, bail bonds, vehicle inspection fees, accident reports, housing reimbursements for prisoners, donations that run through your department, proceeds from foreclosure sales or forfeited asset sales, gun permit fees used to be recorded here when you were collecting those. And I already gave this to you, but Indiana Code 34-24-1-4 is the code for seized property that's forfeited under law. And I guess we really already talked about that. There is, I wanted to point out, if you're writing things down, there is our audit position on accounting for those seized property. There is a bulletin article in the September County Bulletin of 2019, and it's on page 8. So if you go to if you don't get this, email us, but it's a September County Bulletin of 2019 on page 8. So if you had additional questions on that. Statute does require you to remit your fees to the county treasury, and there are penalties for not doing so, including having to pay for them personally. The Form 362 is the prescribed form for the report of collections. And this is the form that accompanies your deposited fees that you collect to the county treasury. This form allows the county auditor to properly post the fees to the funds to which those fees are to be deposited. And you really want them to do that correctly, because a lot of those are your funds that you're going to be using for operations in your department. Once you have reconciled your collections for the month to the bank, you then write a check to the county for the amount to be remitted to the county post that disbursement on your cash book. The check and the report of collections will be taken to the county, or the report of collections will be given to the auditor to start the quietus process. The check is given to the treasurer, who will give you a receipt for the check, and that's the point that the money transfers from your custody to the treasury, and the treasurer is now responsible for it. Once the check has been receipted, the auditor can complete the quietus process, hand you a copy of the quietus, which shows how those funds were posted, so that you can keep track for your own records of where you are in your funds, what has been posted to your funds. So you should, at the end of the process, have a copy of the quietus, the treasurer's receipt to show that they took those custody of that money, and your own copy of the report of collections to keep track of the record on your funds. And Ricky really talked about this, so I'm not going to go in a lot of detail, but somebody needs to be accounting for the drug buy money if such a fund is being used in the department. It would be subject to audit and a cash count. It is accounted, again, for much the same way as the petty cash fund as she described. So once it's established by the county, the check is issued to start the fund. Each draw against the fund should be logged in some manner. We don't need confidential information on the case, so the use of a case number or some other system will suffice. We just need to know that it was logged out, that someone is tracking how it is logged out. So let's say you have a $5,000 fund established. When we come into audit, we'll count the cash on hand, and that should be in a secure location. And we look at the log sheets. At any given point in time, the amount logged out and the cash on hand should equal the original amount of $5,000. If money is returned to the fund, that needs to be posted back in, logged back into the sheets. You need to have controls in place over the drug buy funds and or the confidential funds. Findings in the past have been for misuse of the funds or failing to properly account for the funds. And what I mean by misuse is if the council won't approve the purchase of equipment, for example, you can't use the drug buy money to buy it. That is not the purpose of the fund. That has been a finding in the past. I don't let it be one of yours. And again, in case you've got several slides on one of the prescribed forms, and again, you have the option to use an alternative form for any of these, but these are the prescribed forms for the different ledgers that you're required to have. And this is what we come in, again, we come in and we're gonna ask you for, I need to see the form 205 or the form 358 on your inmate trust. Just so long as you know, translated, that means they want report XYZ from my system. And give them the records to take the place of that. Okay. So this is a copy of the Form 205 that is used for the commissary ledger. It's showing the receipts into the ledger by source and the amount. It shows the disbursements out of the fund by payee and the detail of disbursement and which section of code this disbursement falls over. Remember when Ricky went over the 1 through 9 reasons that are subsections of the code, of which are the authorized uses of it. This is what goes in here, 1 through 9, which one it falls under. And the balance is kept in the last month. Okay, so as you remember, there are 9 allowable uses. The first was merchandise for resale to inmates to the commissary. So anytime you're buying commissary items, you put code 1 in that column. The fourth use was equipment installed in the jail. So if you dispersed for equipment that you've installed in the jail, you put code 4 in that one, just to track this. We are not, as long as it's reasonable, we're not here to question your judgment on what it is. Now, I did say gift cards, if you put it under 2, we would question that, because how is that meeting, cost of running the commissary? But as long as you're reasonable, we're not going to, beat you over the head with it. We just want you to line up where it is within those subsections and what you're falling under for that purchase. And if you're doing it at the time of the purchase, it's so much easier to track it for you to have to remember what I did a year ago. So if you're doing it at the time, it's just much easier to put that code in there.
Do we have a digital version of this form?
Okay, here's the facts. We prescribe the form, but we cannot infringe upon the software vendor and print vendor's right to distribute the form. So no, we cannot issue a digital one. However, you have the right to recreate it in its exact form if you choose. Okay. So when we are in auditing your ledgers and your records, we are looking to see that all of your transactions have been posted timely. Okay. If your ledgers are not up to date, or we can see that you've been posting several months at a time, and believe me, we can tell that, this would not be considered timely. In order to have correct reports and accurate information, the ledgers need to be up to date. That's not saying you have to do it every single day if you get behind. You can catch back up. But, doing 2 or 3 months at a time, that's not keeping up to date. You should be able to get them done within a couple days or at least once a week. And you certainly have to have them done for the month in order to reconcile monthly. Knowing what is in the balance in the commissary fund 3 months ago doesn't really help you make spending decisions today, which is why we're saying you need to have everything up to date. One of the more frequent errors we see when we're auditing is the transfers from the inmate trust for commissary purchases are not actually transferred to the commissary fund timely. And so things don't reconcile. And we find out that you may have gone months and they were posted to one or not the other. So make sure that when you're posting, you post it all the way through. So we're gonna talk about that. You're gonna post it, to a subsidiary ledger for an inmate, to that control ledger, and make sure then it also gets moved into that commissary fund for that purchase. So all receipts to the commissary account need to be posted promptly. While most receipts are going to come from inmate purchases, there are other potential receipts to the commissary funds. You get refunds from vendors, reimbursements for grants if there were expenses paid by commissary, and sometimes, though it should be rare, reimbursements from a county fund for a commissary purchase. I say it should be rare because the commissary fund should not be used to bypass the accounts payable system of your county. We're going to be talking tomorrow about claims and budgets. But if you routinely purchase from commissary and then submit claims to reimburse the commissary from the general fund budget, you are, to a certain extent, bypassing the accounts payable system. You will probably get a finding on that. The commissary fund, as Ricky said, should supplement, not supplant your budget items. I know it's a lot easier to pay from the commissary since the sheriff has control of that fund. You just write a check and it's done. And then get the reimbursement from the county fund, it's all good, but this is not how you're supposed to do claims for the county. And again, it's going to result in a finding. All disbursements from the commissary fund need to be posted. So all supporting documents for those disbursements need to be maintained for audit. So you can use any system of organization that works for you. We're not going to take exception to how you organize as long as you can provide it. So if we pull a disbursement and say, where's the invoice for this? And you can provide it, we don't care how you keep it. But if we pull or request an invoice and you can't find it, is when you're going to have a finding. So again, make sure you have some system that you understand and that will provide the information during audit that we need. And again, posting to the inmate trust is really posting to 2 ledgers at the same time, the detail ledger and the control ledger. The detail ledger shows the individual activity for 1 inmate. So if you have 300 inmates, you're going to have 300 detail ledgers. The total activity of all 300 ledgers is the control ledger. So the detail ledger tells you the balance and activity for 1 inmate's account. The control ledger tells you how much in total you have in the account. The total in receipts and disbursements for the fund, and that's why it's reconciled to the bank. And at any moment in time, you should be able to total all of those details and come back to the control. So in our earlier example, let's say we have 300 inmates and total up all 300 detail ledgers, it comes to $26,345. That should be the total in our control. And it sounds, sounds crazy to say it, but we have audited where those numbers don't match. And that's when we have to try to figure out why don't they match. Okay. especially with software system, no inmate should have a negative balance because you really shouldn't be giving them credit. But if they do, you've got to take that into consideration when you're doing those, just as you have to take into consideration the inactive accounts. You have to account for every part of that inmate trust. When the control and the detail don't match, means you're either short of funds. So if your detail is $26,345, but your control is $24,000, you're $2,000 short there somewhere. Or the other way, you have money in your control, but you don't have a detail to tell you, and you've got money that you don't know who it belongs to. So either situation is bad. Being short is worse, but either situation is bad. Just saying. So when the money is returned, that needs to be posted to the inmate trust, both the detail and the control. I know there has historically been a problem with issuing checks for inmate trust balances because they are often a few dollars and usually not cashed. There is not a threshold amount, and it doesn't have to be returned, even if it's 5 cents, you got to give it back. Many sheriff departments, I think, are using a debit card system now to return funds after discharge. We have also allowed to establish a petty cash fund for your inmate trust account, which allows the inmate to sign a voucher on the date amount, give them a cash, and give them the 35 cents. They just sign a voucher that they received that 35 cents, and you keep that with the inmate trust funds, and you would have a separate detail ledger that keeps track of what's coming in and out of that petty cash fund. If you have questions about that, call us. So ledgers we've been discussing, these are the official records of the department. These are your record balances. When we say we want your record balance, this is what we're talking about. If they are maintained up to date and accurate, they will tell you how much is in the fund, how much has been received and dispersed for any given period of time. As Ricky pointed out, the bank statement is the bank's record of what they are holding in your department's name for that account. Okay? As every time you make a deposit or withdrawal, they're tracking it. And the statement they send you at the end of the month or that you go online to get is their record of what you've put into that account and what you've paid out of that account. What reconcile means to make one account consistent with another. That's all it means, making the two accounts consistent. When you are performing a bank reconcilement, you're making sure that the bank activity shown on that bank statement is consistent with your ledger activity. It's a check and balance. Banks can make mistakes. It doesn't happen a lot, but they can do it. Keep that in mind. So if there's any variance between the bank activity and your activity, you're looking for why. If there are errors, those errors need to be corrected. It can't be your error, but it could be the bank error. You may need to go back to the bank and say, hey, you posted this incorrectly, and get them to correct that. The comparison of the two accounts helps you identify and correct any mistake. And when they reconcile, confirm what you know, it supports. I think I had, $26,000 in my inmate trust, and the bank agrees with me. That's how much money I have. There will usually be timing differences between your record balance and the bank due to timing differences. It's the most common thing. For example, if you make a deposit on the last day of the month, you already have those records posted to your ledger, we hope. But the bank may not credit your account until the first of the following month. That is called a deposit in transit. It was taken to the bank, but not posted to your records on the bank statement that you received. So it's a deposit made, but not still in transit, not posted to your bank yet. You could also issue checks, which is a lot more common, that don't clear the bank and are not posted to the bank statement. Those are called your outstanding checks. Again, you have posted the disbursements to your ledger when you wrote the check. But until they clear the bank, they are still in the bank balance. Deposits in transit, they usually clear the next month. Outstanding checks can carry forward up to 2 years. So you have to keep that in mind. A lot of outstanding checks. If you accept any kind of electronic payments like credit cards, it can take a few days before the payment actually gets to your bank account. So there's a timing difference with those payments. You're receiving it in and posting it to the ledger, but if it's towards the end of the month, it may not hit the bank account to the next. And again, it's going to be treated like a deposit in transit. If you receive a check that is determined to be NSF or fraudulent or even a money order that's considered to be bad and it's returned by the bank, you have a variance there. You've posted a receipt to your account and the bank has not honored that. They have not put any money in your account for that because it wasn't any good. Okay. Until this was resolved, you're going to have a variance that you need to account for on your bank reconcilement. Okay. To be considered reconciled, you must be able to identify and support any variances between the bank statement and your records. They don't agree 100%. They don't have to agree because there's all these timing differences that could be there. But you have to be able to identify and support the differences between them. Okay. So a deposit in transit listing, you make that listing. And then next month, that should clear. So you've got support for that. An outstanding checklist should be complete, but not overstated. So as those checks clear, you need to mark them off the outstanding checklist, but you need to keep that outstanding checklist accurate so it supports that. If you have a variance that you can't identify, then you are not reconciled. It's going to be as simple as that. No matter what amount it is, you're not reconciled. If you can't tell why the two accounts do not agree, then you're not reconciled. If that happens, do not give up. Keep working on it. The good side of reconciling monthly is that the first month you don't reconcile, you know it's from transactions for that month. It's got to be somewhere. It's in your ledger or it's on the bank statement somewhere that month. If you don't reconcile for a month or 2 or 6, it's a lot harder to find because they start netting against each other and it gets much more difficult to tease out what actually went wrong. And that's why we, not only is it required by statute to require monthly, but we can't recommend more than this reason alone, that you reconcile every month so you can keep on top of those kinds of issues. And if you have an unreconciled amount, that doesn't mean don't stop reconciling. So next month, keep looking for that, but next month, continue to reconcile. If you can reconcile back to that amount that you're still looking for, it shows you you're on the right track, that you aren't compounding the problem. So don't say, well, I didn't reconcile, a couple months ago, so I just gave up. Keep reconciling. Keep your records as up to date as you can.
Got a question. Mm-hmm. If you have a vendor that is used for both commissary inventory and jail operation items, and a credit card is used, would it be acceptable to have a commissary reimbursement routinely?
I don't understand the question. Reimbursement from where?
Are we talking about inmate trust? That's the way I read it. I was thinking like a constant instead of, cutting one check a month.
I mean, you are going to expect routine reimbursements between inmate trust and commissary. That's one thing we would expect to see, because that's probably where most of your commissary receipts are coming from. You should not have receipts from general fund to commissary routinely, but inmate trust, yes.
Hopefully that answers it. Okay.
So again, the bank reconcilement is taking the activity that the bank recorded on the bank balance, your records per your ledger, and bringing those together, making those agree. So when you get your bank statement, steps you can follow. So the first step is to look down through the deposits and the collections and make sure they trace. So review all of the deposits on the bank statement, trace them to your ledger for receipts and your duplicate deposit slips, make sure there aren't any differences. If there are any, like a deposit in transit, note that down. Okay, if there's an amount that's different, is it a bank error? Was it your error? Note those down. But if they all tick and tie and you've got them all tied off, that's your first step. In the second step, you're going to do the same thing with disbursements. You're going to look at all of the checks that have cleared and compare that to your check register and outstanding checklist and look for that. So again, if it's on your outstanding checklist and it's cleared, you know, even if it was from 8 months ago, you're going to take that off of your outstanding checklist. Okay, you're going to have added any ones that you wrote this month that didn't clear. But make sure that everything else, all the checks cleared for the amounts that you wrote them for and that you've posted onto your ledger, that all of that information ties. Then review the bank statement for any activity that's not on your ledger. Were there bank fees? Were there bank errors? Did you earn interest? And if you did, you're doing good. And see what's different there, because those would be on the bank statement, but they wouldn't necessarily be on your records. Then do the same thing for your records. Review anything that's posted on your records that might have affected your balance that are not showing up on the bank and figure out why. And once you've taken you're going to come down to your adjusted bank, and when we do it, the example will make more sense. To your adjusted bank balance, you compare that to the ledger balance. And if the two balances don't match, that's when you're going to start doing some more research. Why don't? Were the research on the ledger not matching the deposits, but the disbursements don't match? Were there adjustments that were not posted? Is there a transfer from inmate trust to commissary where the money actually moved, but we forgot to post it to the ledger? Things like that, okay? So each variance needs to be identified, investigated, and if it's an error, it needs to be corrected. That was kind of backwards. Okay. So when you write out your reconcilement, you're going to start with your bank balance as it is on the bank statement. That's what we look at first. So the bank, you know, as of September 31st, or I guess it's November now, October 31st, 2021, what was the bank balance? Add any adjustments that you've noted. So you noted your deposits and transfer. You know what your total outstanding checklist is, okay? So you're starting with your bank balance. Your deposits and transits are amounts that you've posted to your records. They're on the bank, so you got to add those in. Your outstanding checks are checks you've written against it and reduced your balance, but the bank hasn't cleared them, so they're still in the account. You got to subtract those out. And then you're going to look at any other adjustments, such as interest. If you earned interest but it was not posted, you need to back that out until you post it. Bank fees, that's a cost that you didn't post to your ledger that the bank is charging you. So you need to add that back in on the reconcilement. We're talking about the reconcilement, not the actual records here. And then any posting errors. And again, when you find a posting error, please, 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 please correct the error. It's very, very frustrating to come in and have a bank reconcilement with 6 months worth of posting errors that have never been corrected. Just finding it isn't enough. Go ahead and correct it. Once you've added all the adjustments again, you should come back to so that your record balance in your bank statement, and you've got a listing of what those differences are. That's what a reconcilement is in it for all intents and purposes. And we will go over that to what that looks like. So during the audit, what are we expecting? We are, again, expecting that collections have been remitted properly. You're not sitting on fees for 3 or 4 months at a time before you're turning them in. Your ledgers are posted timely and they're accurate. Your bank reconciliations are current and they're complete. Your receipts are posted properly. Your disbursements have supporting documentation, and you have retained the records for audit. You're not showing us, saying, I just don't have it. I don't have ledgers, I don't have invoices, I don't have something. Everything's there for us to look at. I did mention earlier we're doing some of our work remotely, and Ricky's going to go over Gateway tomorrow and the use of that as a tool, so I'm not going to talk about that. I did want to mention with the remote, you may get some requests by email from the audit team, by phone call or email. If you do get it, please acknowledge that you received it, even if it's just say, yes, I got your request, I can't get to it for a little while, and give them kind of an approximate time. They may be working on a couple of audits or different things, and so it helps them balance their time properly. Again, we're really trying to get everything done timely and keep everything going. And again, you might get internal controls through an email, questionnaires on your internal controls that you need to fill out and get back to them, just so you have a heads up on that. Okay, I need to work my way backwards through this. This is also on the website, and this is just an example. This isn't, written in gold. This isn't exactly, but just to show you illustrate some of the things we've talked about. So this would be an inmate trust control ledger. Very, very simple inmate. I only have 4, because that's all I can handle. I only got 4 inmates. Any more than that, I'd go crazy. I don't think I can handle 4. But as you see, I've got a detail then for each one. And I've got snippets of it up here rather so I could get it all on the screen. So it probably wouldn't look exactly like this. So for the first one, and these are, I think they're focused on October. I have a balance forward that this person had $25. I receipted in on October 2nd, $100, and then I made a payment to commissary on October 13th of $15. And over in this last column, you had the $25, added the 100, and then took out the 15, leaving them a balance of 110. And then if you look at the, why is this so slow? The control for this, I posted the same thing, October 2nd, that receipt. I also posted it on the control. So there was a balance forward of all of them, and I'll show you that at the end. And then on that same day that I posted that receipt, I'm going to post that receipt to the detail. I need to post as a control so they stay in balance with each other. And when I posted a payment out, I also have to post it in control so that those two stay in balance. It's swimming or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's better to look at your screen when you're moving your mouse.
Okay. And it's basically the same information going through, just to give you again a few more. You have a balance forward. I guess this was a new inmate. So an initial deposit, the receipt, the date, money going out to the commissary, and then a refund of the balance. So these are just typical things that might happen. And so when I total these ending balances in the control ledger, these 4 people, and again, when you have 300, it's going to be a lot more difficult. I come up with $325. And if I look at my inmate trust, it's staying in line with that because I posted every transaction. I posted on the detail at the same time I posted it on the control. Now your software would do it for you. This isn't a manual environment where you have to think, I got to do it both places. Your software, I'm sure, once you post it to the one account, it's going to bring it forward into that control account because that's probably going to run behind the scenes. But you just need to understand the flow of it, how it goes, how it would. If you understand how the flow works, then maybe you can understand, how important it is to keep those in line. If those are not in line, to go and look where it's breaking down. Okay. And this is what I'm talking about this. We have everything, even though it's very simplified, we have everything posted for the whole month. I have enough information here in the control to go ahead and do my bank rec. And my control matches my detail before I ever go to do that reconcilement. So that I'm going to the same number. I don't have two different numbers that I'm trying to get to. And my reconcilement, again, is pretty easy because it's not a whole lot of activity. But I get a statement from the bank, or I go online and pull this down, and it shows I have $340.25 in the account for my inmate trust. I know I have one check that I wrote that has not cleared for the $40 of my one inmate that I refunded the money to, which leaves an adjusted bank balance. The balance at the bank was $340.25 less the outstanding check that hasn't cleared, and adjust my bank balance to $300.25, which then you compare to your ledger balance, which we just looked at. It's $300.25. So we reconcile. We get to do the happy dance. And you keep an outstanding checklist. Again, this is a very simplified version. Outstanding checks can go up to 2 years, so your outstanding checklist is going to be a lot more complicated than this, unless you go to that different system, a petty cash or debit system for refunds. But for any reason these two numbers did not agree, then we got to do a deeper dive. Where is the difference between what's on the bank statement and what's on my ledger balance? This is the Form 205, which is the commissary. And again, you probably have software for this, but this is, again, if you have the concept of how to do it manually, then it should be the same process. It just is automated by your software. Oh my, I need to widen that. I can't do that. There we go. There you go. So again, I brought a balance forward from the end of last month. And the first section is for the receipts. So on October 2nd, I receipted in, I have a receipt number, which means I should have a duplicate receipt to support this. That's the source document. And it was, in this case, it was a refund from a vendor, and they gave us back $11.69, so that gets added to my balance. So at the end of the day, October 2nd, I knew how much money was in my commissary account. The next day, wrote a check to a vendor to purchase commissary items. So I put the code 1 in there, and that's enough of a description. It was commissary items. I have an invoice, which I will be able to locate during audit, the total amount I spent, and I have, again, it pulls into that balance. Now this is what I was kind of talking about earlier. I just took the form and put it in Excel. The issue with carrying in Excel is that it doesn't have an audit trail. So if you were going to do this for yours, you would need to probably print it out for the month and date it and sign it, because it's unlike software, you don't have the audit trail. I could go back in and change this 6 months from now, and there's no way to tell that I did that. And so that's why we don't recommend Excel as a way to do it.
It really mess you up. Don't do
that.
Really
Don't do that. But if you want to keep it for the month, if you want to do an exact replica in Excel like this, the 205, and then at the end of the month print it out and date it, and then go to your next month in Excel, you can do that. And again, you're just, okay, so on the 7th, I got payments from the inmate trust, which we just looked at. So I got $17 in. So I transferred the money. I actually took the money out of inmate trust and I put it account and I put it in my commissary account. So that increased that by the $17. But at the same time you're doing it, you have to make sure you're making that physical transfer from one bank account to the other. And again, as you're writing your disbursements, who are you writing to? What are you purchasing? Again, use the codes that tie. I think I put them down here, just kind of a cheat sheet of what you're using it for. And again, at the time you're doing it, it's the best time to be doing this because you know why you made the purchase that you did. So you pick which subsection it falls under and just put that code in there. If you get a reimbursement, for example, it's possible that the commissary paid equipment for, say, a new hire, and a grant reimbursed that equipment. It is possible that happens. I've heard of that happening. So, you could have a reimbursement then from the county grant fund into the commissary to pay for that. So you just receipt that in as you would any other receipt and document that. So at the end of the month, you've kept all of your payments current and your receipts current, and you have a running balance of what is in your commissary fund. This is your record balance. This is saying, I know that I have $12,495.32.
Saying that we can't hear you. Can't hear.
Can't hear. Everybody?
I lost sound. Okay, hold on. I hear you just fine. No audio, can't hear, lost, I can hear you. I can hear.
We're almost done.
Now I can hear, now you're back, okay.
Thanks for sticking with us. Okay, so we have our running balance at the end of October. We've kept our ledger up to date, or if it's a report, we've run a report so we know what's in the balance. Oops. Again, I shouldn't be doing it over here. And we're going to do a bank rec for our commissary fund. And again, we're going to start with whatever the bank says we have in the bank account. And I've put stuff in here you may or may not have just to show you how it works. So let's say you got a big whop at 89 cents of interest. Well, that was not ever posted to your ledger. We just looked at the ledger. There's no interest on there. So you're going to subtract that out. And you had $25 that was a deposit on the last day of the month to your commissary fund. It's not on the bank statement yet, so you can add that in. You had $550 in outstanding checks, which were probably, who did we pay at the end of the month? Oh, that software vendor on 10/23, it didn't clear. So you're going to add that in on your outstanding checks. And let's say the bank charges you $25 service charge. So that's a fee you haven't paid yet on the commissary fund. You're going to have to post that, but for right now, it's a reconciling item. For next month, you're going to have that posted to your commissary fund. You're going to go back in when you're done with this reconcilement. You're going to go into this on November, whatever day you're doing it, and say bank service fee. You're not going to have a check number. You're just going to show bank service fee and show the amount that was charged on that so that you keep them in agreement. And once you run that through, those adjustments, again, you come back to an adjusted bank balance of $12,495.32, which is your ledger balance. That's what you need it to be. If you had missed one of these, let's say you didn't pick up on the bank fee, so you would know you need to keep looking. And so you go back through the bank statement again and see if you missed anything, everything you've checked, make sure that you didn't miss anything. Hopefully it would stand right out to you that there was a section that said there was that bank fee, but maybe, again, it might take a little while to go through everything, but it's really just, it's there. I mean, that's really the beauty of it for us. It's all there. It's like a puzzle. You just have to find it. It's not an insolvable equation. It's all there. You just have to kind of figure out where it is and make it work for you. But if you have questions, again, if you send us, we can always look at it, provide suggestions. We can't do it for you, but we can look at things and say, well, maybe if you tried this or looked at that. If you send us something that you haven't reconciled for 2 years, we probably aren't going to be a whole lot of help, just because that would take quite a bit of work. to find, but we can give you suggestions on how to get you started in working your way through that. I have 6 minutes if there are any questions.
I don't have any questions so far.
I put them all to sleep.
I don't know, they couldn't hear, so they were all very... Let's see. You guys got a few minutes. We're going to kind of leave it open and see if any questions come through.
But if not, thank you so much for your attention and time. And if you have questions, feel free to email us, and we will also be back tomorrow.
We're back tomorrow. I do open the WebEx at 8:30, so it gives you a half an hour before this starts to try. I know we've had some issues with some password stuff. We were trying to figure that out. So if you would try and log in a little early so we can get you connected and hopefully avoid all of those problems for tomorrow. But if not, I do have information that I've given to our admin staff, so if you can't get a hold of us, this has started. You are always free to call the office, and they will try and guide you to get connected the best that they can. We're getting lots of very informative, a lot of thank yous. Well, we do hope that this information was valuable. Tomorrow we'll come back, we'll talk about the supplemental annual financial report that you fill out, and then we're going to talk about Gateway, because I know everybody's so excited. So I don't know about you, I'm starving, it's noon, I think we should all just go have lunch. Oh, question on drug money. If we have money left in the general fund, can we transfer or buy equipment with money left? Thank you. Okay, are you meaning forfeiture money, or are you meaning like drug buy money? Because the drug buy money would not be put in the general fund.
If you have an unused appropriation in general fund,
you could use
it for equipment, or you could transfer it to an equipment capital outlay line and use it for that.
But if you're talking about like drug buy money, then
no.
I think they got it. Everybody's starting to sign off. Yeah, if you don't have anything, you can go eat lunch. We'll hang here for just another couple minutes. Make sure there's no other questions. Again, we're recording all the questions. We'll make sure they get into the bulletin just in case if you're afraid you're going to miss something. I am starving. My stomach is like.
Did you go to the bathroom?
I think I figured out how to save the chat, but I'm writing these down just in case.
Okay, because I was writing really fast. Sure.
I know, I wasn't really
doing it over my body, so I'm not sure how clear it is.
Going through it. Under commissary, whatever the county fiscal body agrees on is approved, or do we need to submit those for approval from SVOA? We do not approve any kind of purchases. We are a post-audit agency. So when it comes to, if you're going to use that number 9, I think is what you're talking about in the commissary, then you just need to have an agreement with council. Council needs to agree with you before you can move forward to spend anything. You don't submit anything to us for any kind of approval. Is it possible to get a list of codes that were on your sample commissary ledger? Those come straight out of statute, but that example that she pulled up is available on our website, and it's included in there, right? Yeah. So if you go get that Excel file, if you just scroll down, she just summarized the statute.
It's very simplified. You want to go to the statute to get the exact wording, right, but it kind of gets the categories.
so fast. Commissary is 205, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. People are signing off. All right. I think it is about 12 o'clock right now. So, oh wait. We missed the first hour today due to technical difficulties. Will any of this presentation be available to view again? Yes. So we are recording the entire thing. In fact, we're recording this right now. So after tomorrow, once I get the recordings, I will send them off to be uploaded to our website. It normally takes, I always say about a week to 2 weeks. We try and get it done sooner. It will be on our website on the sheriff's page. It'll be under presentations and training, right near the PDFs that you would have printed off before you came. I will also send out a notification as soon as they're available. Okay, I'll probably do the same thing. I'll probably send it through the Sheriff's Association and the Auditor's office this time just to make sure you get it. But we do suggest that you go to our website and subscribe to get information that we send out for the sheriffs. And with that, it is 12 o'clock. So thanks everybody. Have a great lunch. See you tomorrow.